Chapter 1268. In true Morning Dao world, Su Ming sat at the edge of the relocation rune that was enveloped by the white ripple. He stared at the small white ball in his hand. Screeches came from the small ball at that moment. There was madness and ferociousness in those sounds, as if they wanted to rush out of Su Ming's right hand and devour him. However, Su Ming's right hand was like a seal that locked the small white ball down. No matter how it struggled, it was useless. This is definitely not something from this expanse cosmos. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. The more he studied it, the more he found the white ball to be strange. There were a total of 99,999 fine thread insects in the ball. None of them had any consciousness, but strangely, when they gathered together, they seemed to possess a hint of consciousness. That consciousness was very weak. When Su Ming's divine sense came into contact with it, he immediately sensed a monstrous fierceness and madness coming from it. That danger made it seem as if it wanted to devour the universe. That madness was a madness that refused to submit even in the face of the paragons of the universe. A brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes as he mumbled to himself, "This is an egg." He sensed a hint of life force in the consciousness. It was just as weak as the consciousness, but gave off a feeling that it could grow endlessly. Interesting. It was split into nearly 100,000 parts, but each of them had no consciousness. But once they were gathered together, it could give birth to such a weak will. Since this thing isn't something from this expanse cosmos, then there's a high possibility that it's from Saint D Fire and Dark Dawn. After a moment of pensive silence, Su Ming squeezed his right hand. At the same time, his divine sense turned violent and swept through the small white ball. With brute force, he instantly destroyed all the consciousness within. Cracking sounds immediately came from the small ball. There seemed to be shrill screams of pain that only divine senses could hear. After a moment, a wisp of green smoke spread out from the small ball. When it disappeared, the small ball was no longer white, but had turned a dull gray. At the same time, almost at the instant Su Ming destroyed the consciousness in the small white ball, a shrill roar came from a whirlwind in the depths of the endless whirlwind in true Morning Dao world, right under the gap in arid triad expanse cosmos. If anyone could see through the whirlwind, they would be able to see a huge creature in the depths of the whirlwind. It was a locust that had been enlarged by an unknown amount of time, and it was so big that it was comparable to an ancient god. The locust was laying eggs at that moment. Behind it were many white balls that were connected by threads. There were tens of thousands of them, and they were all connected densely. They were all squirming and shrinking, causing all those who saw them to feel their skins crawl. It was a terrifying sight. At this moment, it was roaring, and its compound eyes were filled with anger and madness. A buzzing sound suddenly echoed from its body. Who was it? Who killed Mayan Fong's youngest son? As the locust roared, a fierce glare shone in its eyes. It stared into space, and after a long while, Su Ming's figure appeared in its eyes. This person is from Saint D Fire's camp. All those from Saint D Fire deserve to die. The locust threw its head back and roared. Its cultivation base spread out from its body, and it was so strong that it caused the galaxy to tremble. It was a power that surpassed that of sublime paragons. It might not have reached Avacania realm, but it was still incredibly terrifying. Just as it was about to rush out, a golden chain suddenly flew out from the gap in space behind it. With a loud slap, it struck its body, causing it to shudder. Damn you, chain of Saint D Fire expanse cosmos. If it wasn't for this thing restricting my descent, I would have been able to enter Arid Triad a long time ago. My fellow Taoist from Dark Dawn, what are you doing? You let me descend so that I can seize the initiative, but if you don't take away this chain of Saint D Fire, how can I descend in one piece? The locust threw its head back and roared. Its voice traveled into the gap, but no one knew where it led to. At that moment, the golden chain shone with golden light. Not only did it not disappear, it charged towards the locust at an even faster speed. By the looks of it, it wanted to crush the locust. Damn it! Damn it! This is Saint D Fire's attack. Madness appeared on the locust's face. When it saw the chain coming towards it, it roared, and its body crumbled on its own before the chain. It turned into tens of thousands of parts that fused into the tens of thousands of eggs behind it. Immediately, the white ball-like eggs shuddered and split apart, turning into tens of thousands of parts that shot out in all directions. When the golden chain swept past them, the world roared. The galaxy was broken, and 9/10 of the tens of thousands of small balls shattered. However, there were still hundreds of them that instantly disappeared into space without a trace. Thank goodness, I activated this body-splitting art right after I came here. Damn you, Saint D-Fire, sooner or later, you'll all die. A crazed voice came from the galaxy. When it reverberated in space, the golden chain swung again and stirred up a layer of golden ripples, as if it wanted to sweep away the hundreds of white balls that had fled, but at the instant it was flung out, a ghastly, cold harumph suddenly came from the gap in arid triad expanse cosmos. At the same time, a monstrous arm that looked like an octopus tentacle flew out and crashed into the golden chain. A loud bang rang out. The battle between us hasn't ended. The battle between Dark Dawn and Saint D-Fire is still going on. If you dare continue being distracted by the matters here, then you might die in this battle. A woman's cold harumph answered the voice, but the golden chain disappeared. Even their presences looked as if they had left arid Triad's gap to start a huge battle over the gap in the battlefield that belonged to them. Almost at the same time the strange battle broke out, the hundreds of small white balls charged through the whirlwind and spread out. They charged in multiple directions towards the life forms that were the closest to them. As long as they touched any life forms, they would immediately become parasites on them. Once they nourished themselves, they would gather together again and return to the form of locusts. However, their level of cultivation might be slightly lower, but as long as they were given time and had enough slaughter and sacrifices, they would be able to recover to the peak of their cultivation base within a short period of time. Not all of the hundreds of small white balls stayed in true Morning Dow world. Quite a number of them had spread out and moved through the expanse cosmoses to head to the other 3 great true worlds. Kill. I need to kill. I need the fear of countless lives when they die. Only by doing so can I recover at the fastest speed possible. Only by doing so can I build my own army of locusts in this crude lower realm. The voice roared, and as the hundreds of small white balls shot forward, it slowly disappeared. About a day later, in the galaxy to the north of true Morning Dow world, Chun-Won and Sima-Yu stared at their surroundings with solemn expressions. There were thousands of cultivators in red robes around them. All of them had apathetic expressions on their faces, and there was an endless grim and chilling air about them. Each of them had extraordinary levels of cultivation, and what was even more shocking was the murderous aura on their bodies, as well as the feeling that they had stood at the peak of hundreds of battles. Perhaps one of them would not be Chun-Wen's opponent. Even if there were 10 of them or 100 of them, they would still not be able to defeat him. However, when there were more than 1,000 of them, their presences seemed to be connected together and fused into an astonishing presence. That presence caused danger to rise in Chun-Wen's heart. When the presences of thousands of people fused together, the sense of danger in Chun-Wen and Sima-Yu's hearts became even stronger. Chun-Wen put away the arrogance of an almighty and asked calmly, "Are you all cultivators from Morning Dow Sect's war chamber? Please ask your commanders to come out and speak." However, the area was silent. No one answered. The thousands of people in the area were all expressionless as they stared at Chun-Wen and Sima-Yu coldly. "Kill them." A calm voice filled with endless chilling air came from behind the group of cultivators. Almost at the instant that voice appeared, the thousands of people looked as if they had woken up from a deep slumber. They struggled to move, and a strange presence swiftly appeared around each of the cultivators. That presence did not seem to be formed by the cultivation methods of cultivators, but was instead similar to the strange divine abilities of the tribes in Divine Essence Star Ocean. At the instant that presence erupted, the thousands of cultivators' eyes turned crimson. Their cultivation bases increased exponentially, and they let out roars that shook the sky and earth at the same time. Kill them. The moment that voice appeared, Chun-Won and Sima Yu's expressions changed drastically. At the same time, the thousands of people took a step forward together. Murderous aura surged into the sky and descended with loud bangs. Just as they were about to erupt, Chun-Won activated his cultivation base. Sima Yu's expression changed, and she spoke in a shrill voice. The two of us represent the only sect in true Morning Dao world, the Ninth Summit, and we have come to recruit all of you. My master is a cultivator from the first plane, and his level of cultivation is far beyond what you can imagine. If you insist on attacking, you will definitely cause a disaster that will destroy all of you. Almost as soon as the words left Sima Yu's mouth, the thousands of cultivators in the area began to radiate killing intent. However, it was at this point that the voice that had just echoed out from behind the crowd could be heard again. Stop! That one word immediately caused the thousands of cultivators to come to an abrupt halt. When Chun-Won saw their uniform movements, his pupils shrank. Immediately after, the cultivators in front of Chun-Won and Sima Yu took 3 steps to the side simultaneously, revealing a crack that led to the world outside. A tall figure slowly walked out from it. That figure held a gigantic battle axe in his hand and strode forward. He was tall and built, and he was filled with an indescribable, murderous aura. But he did not have a head. It was a figure that would strike fear into all those who saw it, and there were strange ripples coming from his cultivation base. He looked like an almighty, but at the same time, he did not. Chun-Won and Sima Yu could not help but stare at him. However, at the instant they saw the headless person walking towards them, their expressions changed. They cast each other a glance, then immediately brought out the jade slips Su Ming had given them and compared them carefully. First update, guaranteed monthly votes. Chapter 1269. Once he compared them, a strange light shone in Chun-Wen's eyes, but before he could speak, a ghastly, muffled roar came from the headless man who was filled with monstrous, murderous aura. Were you talking about the Ninth Summit just now? That's right. Chun-Wen looked at the headless man, then wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply to him. He suddenly squeezed the jade slip in his hand, intending to send the information about this place back to Su Ming. But when he squeezed it, Chun-Wen's expression changed drastically. Sima Yu reacted the same way by his side. They discovered to their shock that the jade slips in their hands had turned into normal stones at some unknown point of time. Their jade slips floated in front of the headless man. They shone with a brilliant light, as if the headless man was observing them with his divine sense. This scene immediately caused the hearts of Chun-Won and his wife to let out a thump against their chests. They were shocked. In fact, they did not know how the headless man had done it. They had not noticed it at all. After a moment, the jade slip in front of the headless man crumbled with a bang. The person who left this jade slip behind has extraordinary power. I can't see its contents either. Lead the way. I can go to the place you spoke of, the Ninth Summit. When the headless man said the last 3 words, no one noticed that there was a slight tremble in his voice. His heart was no longer as calm as it seemed on the surface. A huge storm was raging in his heart, and there was even endless anticipation in his heart. Did you leave this jade slip behind, my youngest junior brother? The headless man mumbled in his heart. In silence, he swung the battle axe in his right hand, and it immediately turned into a long arc that charged towards Chun-Won and Sima Yu. A long arc was formed between the two of them, and it charged into the whirlwind in the air. Once a loud bang rang in the air, a path was opened up for them. Lead the way, the headless man said languidly. Chun-Won and Sima Yu cast each other a glance. After a moment of hesitation, they no longer hesitated. The jade slip was given to them by Su Ming, and since he had stated that they had to immediately inform the people who saw the portrait in it, then even though the jade slip had shattered, they could still bring these people to Su Ming. Chun-Won and Sima Yu's expressions changed, and they chose to lead the way. Ripples spread out from under their feet. When they enveloped the area, they charged forward along the path opened by the whirlwind. Behind them, the headless man strode forward. Behind him were thousands of cultivators with expressionless faces. The group charged forward in the whirlwind. The headless man did not care about the whirlwind at all. He swung his axe, and wherever he went, the whirlwind would crumble and tumble backwards. He had forcefully cut open a path. At the instant the jade slip shattered, Su Ming sat cross-legged. Wen's eyes flew open. A dark light shone in his eyes shone. Su Ming's expression on. When that's true, he Ming Su's eyes with Su S when Su to say. Said he Dao Su one, and Ming means to. Ming Su to, he went to realm with him, has to, he Ming Su. Heluan looks like there are still quite a number of powerful warriors in true Morning Dao world, even though it has fallen into the disaster of the whirlwind. This is good. Su Ming fell into a moment of pensive silence before he closed his eyes again. He could sense that Chun Wan and his Dao partner had not died. Instead, they were swiftly approaching him from the distance. All the answers would be clear once they returned. At the same time, Su Ming sensed that his two clones were using different methods to gather more souls and more power of the laws of fate with their different personalities. All of this proved that Su Ming's guess was feasible. If he could gather all the remaining cultivators from true Morning Dao world, then he would be able to complete the second step of his plan. He would be able to control his own fate, and from there, he would be able to use the light of extreme darkness to replace the laws in a small area. In the east, Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole shone with golden light. There was a gentleness to it, but compared to the strength of his body, while it was gentle, there was a domineering air to it. Miaophone was behind him, and there were tens of thousands of people following behind them. They moved in a mighty manner, and all of them were enveloped by the white ripple. Before them was a planet that looked rather complete. When they arrived, nearly 10,000 cultivators flew out from it. Obey me and enter Ninth Summit. You will obtain protection from the disaster. This is your only choice right now. Do not fight against it, and do not refuse it, because this is a sliver of hope for survival. The clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole slowly lifted his hands while golden light spread out from his body. His voice spread in all directions. To the west of true Morning Dao world, Su Ming's Zikang clone brought with him a murderous aura and bloodlust. Wherever he went, all those who refused him would be killed. Behind him was a sea of blood. There were countless heads in it, and they intimidated the tens of thousands of cultivators who followed him, causing their hearts to tremble. When they looked at Su Ming's Zikang clone, their gazes were filled with deep respect. In another direction was a lone ship drifting through the whirlwind. On it was a gentle man who was drinking wine with a beautiful woman by his side. He looked like he was enjoying himself immensely. Behind him was an incredibly boorish man. He had a simple and honest look on his face, and he cast a sideways glance at the gentle man with a scornful look. Second senior brother, should I call the woman beside you my second sister-in-law, or should I call her second senior brother's master? Damn it, this form of address is too confusing. The man let out a harumph. Sitting beside the gentle man was a beautiful woman. She did not mind the man's words in the slightest. Instead, she covered her mouth and chuckled. Her eyes, which were like crescent moons, looked at the gentle man beside her. He was once her disciple, but now he was her adorable man. Huzi, do you know what are the 3 things you can't do in life? The gentle man drank and put down his cup as a signal for the beautiful woman beside him to pour more wine for him. He turned his head around and spoke with a smile that was as warm as the spring breeze. Of course I know what the 3 things are. To me, when I want to drink, but I don't have any wine. When I want to sleep, I don't have any. When I want to go home, I don't have any. When I can't see the 9th summit, I also don't have any. What other things are you talking about? Come, I like to hear them, the man said loudly, looking incredibly displeased with the gentle man. Ahem, 3rd junior brother, you're so rude. It would have been fine if there weren't any outsiders around, but now that there are outsiders around, can you at least show me some respect? The gentle man shook his head and picked up his wine cup to take a sip with an incredibly resigned look on his face. Bullsh *T. From the day you left and left me alone in the Immortals Union, I swore that I would definitely take revenge. Why while you went to a place with women and left me to suffer there? How many years has it been since you came to fetch me? There were a few times when I was beaten to the point that I had holes all over my body. The man glared at the gentleman. But this is the plan eldest senior brother said. He wanted us to split up and said that you still needed to train. If you're angry, you could go to eldest senior brother. The gentle man pursed his lips and sighed. I wouldn't dare to go to eldest senior brother, but when it comes to you, haha, I've already shown you enough respect. I didn't mention how you peeped at the female disciples from the other summits with me in the past. I still remember that you even wanted to create a rune for peeping, but you failed and were chased all the way to the 9th summit. The man glared at the gentleman and said with a harumph. The gentleman let out a few fake coughs and changed the topic. Right now, you're envious of me, and you're even jealous of me. That's why you hate me. But I'm your second senior brother. Ha. Oh well, look at the season. Could it be that it's already spring? Don't worry, Kuzi. I'll leave your marriage to second senior brother. The gentleman patted his chest and said as if he was making a promise. Come, tell me, second senior brother, what kind of person do you like? Don't worry, even if you can't find one with me. Once we go to the barren lands of divine essence and find our youngest junior brother, he will definitely find a good one for you, the gentleman said in a teasing manner while drinking his wine. Kuzi fell silent. Huh, why aren't you saying anything? Kuzi, you're still young, don't be shy. Tell me. When the gentleman saw the man's expression, his interest was instantly piqued. He sat up a little straighter and immediately spoke. Kuzi still remained silent. Let me guess. Do you like young ones? Do you feel like you're protecting them when they're together like this? No, that's not right. Then do you like older ones? A mature and attractive middle-aged woman? The gentleman continued speaking, causing the man's face to twitch a few times. Then he swiftly lifted his right hand, and a pot of wine appeared in his hand. He threw it at the gentleman. An incredibly exaggerated scream of pain traveled into the air, and it was followed by a sigh. Oh, women, they're middle-aged. Oh, girls, they're still too young. Kuzi, why do you have such strong tastes? Young master, that's a good poem. That's right. Young master, that's the 637th poem along the way. I've recorded all of them. Kuzi's face twitched a few more times on the ship. He looked at the gentleman in resignation and let out a long sigh. He picked up his pot of wine and started drinking, no longer bothering himself with the man. One galaxy, 3 directions, and a lifetime of brothers. Perhaps it was due to some sort of fate, but it did not matter whether it was the headless man or the ship. Both of them were slowly getting closer to where Su Ming was. If there were no accidents on the way, then perhaps before long, they would see each other. They had been separated for 1,000-something years, and perhaps they would meet again soon. Second update, please get me a guaranteed monthly ticket. Chapter 1270. Time trickled by, and another month or so went by. Su Ming continued sitting and meditating. In a quiet galaxy, he quietly gained an epiphany of the fate in the world around him, and sensed the power of the laws of fate he absorbed from his 2 clones. His cultivation base and aura were practically growing every single day. It might not be a lot, but it was undoubtedly becoming stronger. In fact, during this period of time, besides trying to understand the laws of fate, Su Ming also spent some time understanding the memories of Pompol Dao. From them, he gained a better understanding of essence and the existence of arid triad expanse cosmos. Arid triad expanse cosmos is like origin of heaven. In the eyes of Saint Defire and Dark Dawn, this is an expanse cosmos that can be compared to a newborn expanse cosmos. It's the same for Dark Dawn and Saint Defire expanse cosmos in the beginning. However, as they grew over the endless years, they developed one expanse cosmos after another until each of them had 180 expanse cosmoses. This can be considered to be complete. The expanse cosmos they belong to has already grown to its peak. If I compare that expanse cosmos to the mother, then the 180 expanse cosmoses within it are the children, and the cultivators and lives in those 180 expanse cosmoses are the blood. Arid Triad is a newborn expanse cosmos. If there is enough time in the future, it will also be an origin cosmos that can develop into 180 expanse cosmoses. That is why if either Saint Fire or Dark Dawn obtains Arid Triad, they will have the power to destroy the other party during the war. That is why from the moment they discovered Arid Triad expanse cosmos, they began using their own methods to continuously fight for it. Su Ming opened his eyes and stared at the galaxy before falling silent. Compared to Saint Fire and Dark Dawn, the current Arid Triad was like a child. It could not compare to Saint Fire and Dark Dawn at all. In fact, it did not even have the power to fight against them. Regardless of whether it was Saint Fire or Dark Dawn, it would be incredibly easy for either side to obtain Arid Triad. Fortunately, they fought against each other and would not give the other party a chance. Arid Triad expanse cosmos might be weak, but it was still a newborn expanse cosmos, which was why it had a suppressive force against external forces. This was an instinctive reaction of Arid Triad expanse cosmos. As it grew, it rejected all external forces from entering. Even if someone tried to enter by force, they would be suppressed, but this had changed during the disaster a year ago. A huge gap appeared, allowing the people from Saint Fire and Dark Dawn to enter without any reservations. It was as if a door had been opened, causing Arid Triad to be naked. It could only wait to be devoured. All of this was because of Su Xianyi. Since I'm not Su Xianyi's son, then who is his son? Is it Yu Xian? But I don't think it's that simple. This person is talented and bold, and he's close to being crazy. His thoughts are far from what an ordinary person can judge, and it's impossible to guess. But no matter what, there had to be a part of his plan. He wanted to destroy all of Arid Triad expanse cosmos and make Saint Fire and Dark Dawn pay a devastating price. This also explained why he had opened such a gap. First, it was to cause the war between Dark Dawn and Saint Fire to reach its climax. Second was so that Dark Dawn and Saint Fire could descend on a large scale. It would be best if all their powerful warriors could descend. Because of it, once Arid Triad expanse cosmos collapsed, the destruction of the initial expanse cosmos will be something that no cultivator could fight against. But what benefits will he gain by doing this? How can he make the Abyss Builders rise to power? What other plans does he have? In silence, Su Ming shook his head. He had some thoughts in his heart, but he did not know whether his analysis was correct or not. He could only continue waiting, observe, and obtain a serendipity in the disaster. Essences are the foundation of all external objects. Wind, rain, thunder, lightning, all things in existence have essences. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, they're the changes in the essences of all things in the world. Mastering essences is the same as mastering the path of becoming a powerful warrior. The more essences I understand, the stronger my level of cultivation will be. Is this the foundation of cultivation in Saint Fire expanse cosmos? I wonder what Dark Dawn is. Su Ming remembered the small white ball from before, and after a moment of pensive silence, he went through some of the battles he had fought against the cultivators from Dark Dawn, suppressing the place. Interesting. Based on Zhang Jidao's memories, the people in Dark Dawn's camp are all abnormal creatures that look different from cultivators. They can take human form, but usually only when they turn into their true forms can they bring forth their full power. For example, there was a cultivator from Dark Dawn who fought against Zhang Jidao in the past. His true form was a three-eyed toad that was thousands of feet big. Compared to Saint Fire calling themselves immortals and deities, the people from Dark Dawn call themselves monsters and spirits. They don't cultivate essences, but their cores. Even their cultivation systems might be roughly the same, but the source of their cultivation is completely different. They cultivate the power of their cores. This core is the soul, the nascent divinity, and the core of the brand of their lives. It changes unpredictably, and it can fight against the essences of Saint Fire expanse cosmos. It's clear that the power of the so-called core cultivation also contains the roots of the universe. While Su Ming remained silent, he lifted his right hand, and the small gray ball immediately appeared on his palm. There was still life force in the small ball, but there was no longer any form of consciousness. There were nearly 100,000 threads in it, and they did not move as if they were asleep. If that's the case, then I can be certain that this item came from Dark Dawn, but since it appeared in the whirlwind, could it be that a cultivator from Dark Dawn has descended? Su Ming thought about it for a moment, then spread his divine sense outwards to fuse into the small white ball and each of the threads. However, no matter how much Su Ming fused his divine sense into it, even if he completely covered the interior of the small gray ball, he still could not find a spot where he could brand his divine sense. It was as if the small gray ball was transparent. A fierce glare shone in Su Ming's eyes. He opened his mouth and coughed out a wave of origin life, aura. Once it surrounded the small ball, he used his divine sense to sweep through it again, but the result was the same. The small ball seemed to have countless threads densely packed together, but Su Ming still could not brand even a single one of them. Su Ming let out a cold harumph. He lifted his left hand and formed a seal. Immediately, the white ripples around him shone. Once they spread out, they tumbled backwards and charged toward Su Ming. When they closed in, they turned into Su Ming's white ring. Under Su Ming's will, the ring instantly enveloped the small gray ball. It shrank slightly, and with a crack, cracks appeared on the small ball. The near 100,000 threads instantly shuddered. As they trembled, Su Ming sent his divine sense outwards again. This time, he did not stop for even a single moment. He successfully branded his divine sense on the 100,000 threads. Once he finished doing all this, Su Ming unfurled his right hand and tapped the small gray ball. It immediately shattered with a bang, and a buzzing sound reverberated in the air. Gray threads flew out from within and instantly surrounded Su Ming, turning into a gray whirlwind. That whirlwind was formed by nearly 100,000 gray threads. As they rotated, Su Ming could vaguely see an indistinct shadow within them. That shadow looked like a much larger locust, and it exuded a strange and enchanting air. Su Ming closed his eyes. He could sense that each of the 100,000 threads contained his brand, and he could control them. However, at the same time, he could also sense that these 100,000 threads were like babies, and they had lost their foundation. They could not continue growing, and before long, they would wither away and die one by one. Almost at the instant, Su Ming used the power of the white ring to brand his divine sense on the 100,000 threads and formed a whirlwind around him. Dozens of cultivators in dozens of places in true Morning Tao world shuddered at the same time. These people all had a huge hole at the center of their brows, but no blood flowed out. The hole had been pierced by a white ball of light that had calmly appeared not too long ago while they were meditating. After that, their presences had disappeared, but now, as they trembled, they opened their eyes at the same time. Someone created a baby of mine. This baby isn't one of the ones I'd split up previously. This is the one I've been brewing for a long time. I sent it out to live as a parasite in a cultivator in this expanse cosmos. Then, it went on to live as a parasite in another person, but someone took it out and wiped off its consciousness. That person is quite bold. He actually managed to wipe off my consciousness and even left a brand behind. It's a telling sign that his level of cultivation isn't weak, but isn't he a little too conceited? If my baby has enough nourishment, it can eventually grow to the same level as me. But in arid triad expanse cosmos, unless it devours hundreds of millions of cultivators, it will find it very difficult to grow. I don't have to worry about it. Instead, I look forward to it being nurtured by me. That way, when I meet him, I can devour this baby, and it will save me quite a lot of time. These voices came from the mouths of the dozen-something cultivators who were scattered in different places at the same time. Their words and tone were the exact same. In fact, there were quite a number of cultivators and ferocious beasts who had holes at the center of their brows in the other three true worlds. They said the exact same words at the same time. Su Ming stared at the spinning threads around him, then at the vague shadow of a locust. He narrowed his eyes, then lifted his right hand and stretched out his index finger. Immediately, a thread shot out in a flash and wrapped itself around Su Ming's finger before crawling halfway into it. Su Ming's expression remained as calm as ever. He carefully sensed his surroundings, and he discovered that a hint of his cultivation base was being rapidly absorbed. It fused into the gray thread through his finger, causing it to become visibly thicker. The life force in his body also became much denser, and he no longer looked as if he was about to wither away. Absorbing your cultivation base, huh? I wonder if this thing is a great supplement for you. Su Ming fell into a moment of pensive silence, then decided that he would raise the creature from Dark Dawn and use it to gain a better understanding of Dark Dawn. That was why, after a moment of pensive silence, he swung his right hand and flung the thread away. Then a poisonous wasp appeared on his palm. It was the poisonous wasp that contained the god Ascension nectar. Under Su Ming's control, a drop of poison seeped out of the poisonous wasp stinger. At the instant it appeared, the 100,000 threads surrounding Su Ming froze at the same time, as if they had become still. They did not move for an instant. Third update. We'll continue tomorrow. Please get monthly votes. Chapter 1271. God Ascension nectar was contained in the poisonous wasp's body. This was a treasure Su Ming had obtained in Yin Death region, and it had accompanied him for most of his life. Even when he was in the world filled with endless light beyond the universe, this item had been fused into the resentful way, which was why it was not damaged in the slightest. This was something he had instinctively prepared in the beginning, but in the end, he had managed to keep his storage bag intact and not crush it. At that moment, once the poisonous liquid containing the god Ascension nectar was taken out, all the gray threads surrounding Su Ming instantly stopped moving. They did not move, as if their instincts had made them completely attracted to the god Ascension nectar at that moment. In just the span of a few breaths, the gray threads let out a shocking screech and charged towards the poisonous liquid in front of Su Ming. They were so quick that in the blink of an eye, they gathered together with a bang and turned into a small gray ball in front of Su Ming that contained the poisonous liquid. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He stared at the small ball, and after a moment, he saw its color rapidly changing. It gradually turned from gray to crimson red, but soon it returned to gray again. However, there were some scattered red spots on it. At the same time, there seemed to be an endless amount of things squirming about in the small ball. Sometimes they would sink in, and at other times they would bulge out. It looked incredibly bizarre. Su Ming could clearly sense that the drop of poison containing the god Ascension nectar was melting at an indescribable speed with his divine sense. There might not be much god Ascension nectar contained in that drop of poisonous liquid, but if Su Ming absorbed it, he would need a long time before he could perfectly fuse it into his body. In fact, when he absorbed it in the past, he would only absorb a small amount of it, which was why he could fuse it within a short period of time. Yet now, the gray threads were absorbing it so quickly that shock appeared on Su Ming's face. In just the span of a dozen-something breaths, the gray ball's squirming returned to normal with a bang. As buzzing sounds echoed in the air, the ball shattered, and countless gray threads flew out from within. The drop of poisonous liquid containing the god Ascension nectar had completely disappeared. It was also at that moment that Su Ming suddenly gained a brand new understanding towards the gray threads, because he noticed that they were not just devouring the god Ascension nectar, but also the poisonous liquid. The poisonous liquid was incredibly terrifying, but to the gray threads, it was still something they could devour. When the threads surrounded Su Ming once again, they let out piercing screeches and turned into a whirlwind. As they charged forward, cracking sounds rang out continuously. Su Ming's pupils immediately shrank. He could clearly see cracks appearing on one of the countless threads. As more cracks appeared, a ray of grayish-red light intersecting with each other charged out. It looked as if it had just left its shell and left its body. It was so quick that it charged through the whirlwind with a speed that far surpassed what it had been before. Su Ming's eyes sparkled, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. He lifted his right hand into the air and spread his divine sense outwards. Immediately, the grayish-red light changed its direction in the whirlwind and charged towards Su Ming. In an instant, it appeared on Su Ming's right palm and turned into a locust whose body was gray but with some red dots. It might have seemed light, but when Su Ming looked at it, he could sense wisps of chilling air spreading out from it. When the wings charged forward, they would definitely be as sharp as a blade slicing through the air. Its compound eyes were dark. Even if it was looking at Su Ming, it was difficult for him to see it from its appearance. He could only see it with his divine sense. At that moment, a large amount of cracking sounds continued. Su Ming lifted his head and looked over. He saw that the countless threads around him had all cracked. Soon after, locusts that were the exact same as the one in his hand broke out of their shells. For a period of time, the whirlwind surrounding Su Ming was no longer formed by threads, but had turned into a whirlwind of locusts. Su Ming's pupils shrank, but he gradually calmed down. He lifted his right hand and flung it forward. Immediately, a crystal flew out. The moment it appeared, the swarm of locusts rushed towards it, and in the span of a breath, the crystal disappeared without a trace. Fortunately, the bald crane was sleeping in Su Ming's storage bag, or else if it was awake and saw this scene, it would definitely go up and fight against the locusts. Wherever locusts go, not a single blade of grass will grow. Su Ming mumbled, but the moment he said those words, the swarm of locusts spun around and spat out some residue. There were nearly 100,000 locusts, and each of them spat out a small amount. Su Ming's expression changed. He lifted his right hand and seized the air. Immediately, the residue was gathered by him. Once it gathered together, it formed the size of the crystal. However, there was not a hint of spiritual aura in it. It's not that it doesn't devour everything. Su Ming hesitated for a moment, then lifted his right hand and cut open a wound on his palm. He squeezed out a drop of blood, and when it flew out, his expression changed. At the instant the locusts saw the drop of blood, their bodies shuddered, as if they were struggling non-stop to devour it. However, under Su Ming's control, they could not fight back. They could only send their desire to Su Ming. This was the feedback of nearly 100,000 locust wills. The strength of their wills gave Su Ming a feeling that if he did not give them an order within a short period of time, there was a high possibility that they would turn on him. During the short moment when Su Ming's expression changed, 8 of the 100,000 locusts rushed out and charged towards Su Ming's blood. They had clearly fought against Su Ming's control and wanted to devour it on their own, ignoring the fact that Su Ming had not given any orders to them. Su Ming let out a cold harumph. He lifted his right hand and flicked his fingers a few times. Banging sounds reverberated in the air, and the locusts instantly let out shrill screams of pain. Their bodies shattered, and they disappeared without a trace. However, there was one that did not die under Su Ming's finger. Instead, once it fought back, most of its body was destroyed, but it still closed in on Su Ming's blood and devoured it in one gulp. Once it did so, it threw its head back and let out a roar. Its body swiftly swelled up to twice its original size, and it clearly surpassed the other locusts by quite a bit. When Su Ming saw this, shock rose in his heart. One monster cultivator from Dark Dawn. Right now, I'm only seeing its infant form. It's like a clone, but it has such great potential. Given enough time, it will grow to a terrifying state. In fact, this monster cultivator is incredibly difficult to control. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. He lifted his hands and formed a seal. Brands flew out, and he also exhaled a breath of his origin aura to envelop the slightly larger locust. With a brand at full power, he began refining it again. As for the other locusts, they gathered together under Su Ming's divine sense and turned into a small ball that floated in front of him. The ball did not seem big, but there were nearly 100,000 locusts contained in it. It might seem impossible, but in truth, it was the truth. This is a monster cultivator that was born with control over the power of dimensions. That's why its infant form was able to do this the moment it attacked. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. After a moment, he refined the locust that was more than twice its original size and sent it into the small ball. Then, he brought out another one and continued refining it. He did not find it troublesome. He wanted to refine nearly 100,000 locusts once more. At the same time, the hundreds of cultivators and ferocious beasts with holes at the center of their brows in true morning Tao world and the other three true worlds shuddered simultaneously. Even though the holes at the center of their brows were slowly closing up, ghastly and cold laughter rose in their divine senses. He actually broke the first seal and turned from an egg into a larva. However, to be able to do this, he must have paid a great price. Go ahead and nurture me. The better you nurture my larva, the more help it will be to me in the future. Foolish cultivator from the lower realms, there will come a day when I will let you know just how foolish your actions are. That day is not too far away. When all my bodies return to normal, I will be able to carry out the blood sacrifices for my cultivation. Once I reach a certain level, all my bodies will fuse together, and I will be able to descend in arid triad. As his divine thought echoed in the air, the hundreds of cultivators and ferocious beasts closed their eyes. Time trickled by without their knowledge. When Su Ming refined most of the 100,000 locusts, his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole had already opened up a new world in the east. There he brought nearly 100,000 cultivators and swept through the galaxy. With a white ripple around, not even the whirlwind could stop their footsteps. Wherever they went, the people would either submit to them and send their souls, or the leaders would be killed, and the others would be forced to obey. The cultivation world had always been a place where the strong preyed on the weak, especially with the existence of the whirlwind in the galaxy right then. In the face of a disaster, the strong preyed on the weak became even more bloodthirsty, and it became the only law in the world. However, compared to Su Ming's Akang clone, his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole could be said to be extremely gentle, because Su Ming's Akang clone had stirred up a wave of blood that surged into the sky in the west with his destructive will. There was no mercy, no reason, only obedience. Wherever he went, there would be endless slaughter. In true Morning Tao world, which was in the midst of the disaster, only this sort of ruthless method could unite everything within a short period of time. At the same time, the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole had yet to cover the entire East, but the Akang clone had already seen the barrier connecting the West to the fourth formation expanse cosmos. This was like rolling a snowball. The beginning was the most difficult, but once momentum was formed, it would become easier. The roars of an army of tens of thousands was enough to crush all wills. Even if the individual was incredibly strong, in the face of the disaster and the army of tens of thousands, they would still have to submit. If they dare to fight back, then they would not just kill a single person, but their entire bloodline. On one day, while Su Ming was refining the 100,000 locusts, his right hand suddenly shuddered. He might have quickly recovered and lifted his head, but when he looked at the galaxy, there was a hint of excitement and a sentimental look in his eyes. Chapter 1272. Su Ming stared at the galaxy. With his level of cultivation, he could see very far into the distance. He could see through the whirlwind beyond the ripple, and he could see a group of people rushing over from the distance. He saw Chun Wan and Sima Yu at the forefront of the group, and he also saw a headless man before the thousands of cultivators following behind them. He took huge strides forward, and with one swing of the battle axe in his hand, the whirlwind would tumble to the sides with a bang, revealing a path for passage. Su Ming stared at the headless man, and the excitement and sentimentality on his face intersected with each other. They had been separated for 1,000-something years. At that time, he had still been rather young, but now he had completely grown up. However, even if even more time had passed, the friendship between senior and junior brothers was like aged wine. It would only grow stronger, and it would never disappear. Eldest senior brother, Su Ming mumbled. He did not show too much pleasant surprise on his face, neither did he show much excitement. This was because they had both grown up, and sincere friendship did not need to be expressed outwardly. It existed in one's heart and soul, and it was a kind of brotherly love that could be understood just by looking into each other's eyes. Su Ming mumbled. Su Ming lifted his right hand and put away the locust he had been refining. He stood up and with a smile on his face, he slowly walked forward. His eldest senior brother's arrival was a great joy in his life. This was the first time they had reunited after being separated for 1,000-something years. There was no way Su Ming could just sit there and wait for his senior brother to arrive. He had to go and welcome him. Su Ming could see his eldest senior brother, but his eldest senior brother could not see Su Ming. When a dozen-something breaths passed, the headless man suddenly came to a halt while walking in the whirlwind. He might not have a head, and his expression could not be seen, but the hand holding the battle axe shuddered slightly. The murderous aura around his body gradually disappeared. He stood there and stared into the distance with the eye of his soul. Gradually, a smile appeared in the depths of his heart, along with a sense of happiness. The whirlwind in front of him roared at that instant. A white ripple spread out from within it. As it spread out, the whirlwind tumbled backwards to reveal a large, empty galaxy. Su Ming walked over with a smile on his face. When Shen Wan and Sima Yu saw him, they immediately wrapped their fists in their palms and bowed deeply. "Greetings, my lord." Su Ming, who was dressed in a black robe and had his face covered, approached them slowly. When he walked past Shen Wan and Sima Yu, he arrived in front of the headless man. Su Ming fell silent, and so did the headless man. Everyone in the surroundings was silent. When Su Ming lifted his black robe to reveal an incredibly unfamiliar face to the headless man, the eyes on that unfamiliar face made the battle axe in the headless man's hand disappear, and he spread his arms wide. With a smile on his face, Su Ming spread his arms wide as well. Right before thousands of cultivators' gazes, the two of them hugged each other for the first time in 1,000-something years in the galaxy. Neither of them said a word. As the two brothers embraced, they patted each other's backs fiercely. It was as if they wanted to express their friendship of more than 1,000 years through this embrace. "You've grown up." Eldest senior brother took a step back and stared at Su Ming. His ancient and sentimental voice tumbled out of his body. There was nostalgia in his voice, along with his will to protect the Ninth Summit and his junior brother, who belonged to him even if he had to destroy the universe. It was a simple sentence, but it contained everything that had happened over the past 1,000-something years. Eldest senior brother was not good at expressing his thoughts, but there was a hint of quiver in his ancient voice when he said those words. Others might not be able to sense it, but Su Ming could clearly sense it. "You've grown up." Su Ming stared at his eldest senior brother and said with a smile. In his smile was nostalgia for the Ninth Summit, longing for his senior brother, and longing for his home. Shen Wan and Sima Yu sat cross-legged in the area without the whirlwind. Occasionally, they would lift their heads to look at Su Ming and the headless man, who stood beside the relocation rune in the distance. On the other side of Chun Wan were thousands of cultivators who were trying their best to meditate. They were silent and did not move. At that moment, no one dared to disturb Su Ming and his eldest senior brother. While sitting cross-legged, a pot of wine appeared in Su Ming's hand. The other pot was with his eldest senior brother, but he did not drink from it. Usually, when he patted it with his right hand, most of the wine in the pot would sink. Drinking in this manner caused a hint of pain to appear on Su Ming's face when he saw it. He would never forget the scene of his eldest senior brother cutting off his own head in the land of berserkers and turning into Shingon. Even if time had passed, the memory of that scene would always remain in Su Ming's heart. "You were forced into Divine Essence Star Ocean in the past. When I woke up, I made up my mind to bring Second and Hu Zi out of the land of berserkers. I wanted to step into the Immortals Galaxy and go to Divine Essence Star Ocean to search for you," eldest senior brother said hoarsely. He patted the pot of wine with his right hand, and the wine inside was finished. "You're my junior brother, and you're our youngest junior brother. We might have different blood coursing through our veins, but we're cultivators of the Ninth Summit. Fate has bound us together, and then we're family that's 10,000 times stronger than blood. You were willing to give up your status as the god of berserkers for us and go to Divine Essence Star Ocean willingly. We, as your senior brothers, we could give up our lives for you." You don't know just how many times I saw Huzi crying alone when I woke up after you left. He drank alone and stared at your cave abode, and your second senior brother. He has changed a lot. Most of the time, his expression is dark. I know that he hates that his level of cultivation is not high enough. He hates that he can't change everything, because this hatred also exists in my heart. After you left, and we woke up one after another, the three of us decided that no matter what price we had to pay, we would become stronger. We would continue becoming stronger, and we would become so strong that we could control our own destinies. Eldest senior brother said hoarsely. When he lifted his right hand, another pot of wine appeared. With a slap, all the wine in it disappeared. Su Ming stared at his eldest senior brother quietly, at the headless but incredibly built man before him. As he stared at him, a smile appeared on Su Ming's face. Within that smile was the flow of time, along with a will that made Su Ming persevere. Because the person before him was real. He was one of the few real existences in his life. This reality did not lie in his body, but in his soul, his will, and his friendship towards Su Ming. All of this was real. After experiencing everything in the past and going through Su Xianyi's plan, Su Ming did not dare to believe in what was real and what was fake, because once he believed in it and became serious about it, then if all of this turned out to be fake, the damage to him would be incredibly great. However, from the moment Su Ming stepped into the Ninth Summit, he had always been certain that the Ninth Summit was real. His eldest senior brother, second senior brother, and Huzi were real. These were the most precious things in Su Ming's heart. They were the things he would protect with everything he had. They were the treasures of his life. Su Ming had been bloodthirsty before, he had been cold-blooded before, and he had been mad before. However, there was still a fragility in his heart that very few people could understand. That fragility belonged to his family, and it belonged to the Ninth Summit. How did you leave the land of berserkers? Su Ming stared at his eldest senior brother. He could sense the murderous aura around him. It was definitely not something that could be gathered from a simple slaughter. It was definitely a monstrous, killing intent that could only be accumulated in a sea of blood for many years. The land of berserkers. His eldest senior brother fell silent for a moment. You could go to Divine S and Star Ocean for us, and we could also go out to search for you. We were willing to listen to that damned ancient will from Death region and become its generals to conquer the other continents in Death region. We completed all of his requests. I don't know how Second and Huzi lived through it. They didn't say anything, and Huzi even forgot about it on his own. But I know that I killed an endless number of living beings during that war. I gained my level of cultivation through killing. My level of cultivation isn't high, but the strongest part of my cultivation base is my murderous aura. If we're talking about cultivation, then I've cultivated a murderous aura. I've cultivated a river of souls. When eldest senior brother said those words, he lifted his right hand and swung it in the direction of the galaxy. In an instant, the galaxy roared, and a long river manifested in the air. That long river was boundless, and there were countless living beings howling shrilly within it. They were struggling and roaring, and they could not be dispelled. As for why I walked out of Death region, it's because of this. Eldest senior brother pulled his right hand back and seized his chest. Immediately, his chest was reduced to a bloody mess. The blood that flowed out of it turned into a complicated brand on his chest. That brand looked like a grimace, and it seemed to be laughing. This brand is known as Dark Dawn's spirit. Only those ancient wills who were branded with it and became the offering of the expanse cosmos in Dark Dawn's camp allowed me to leave Death region. It was the same with your second senior brother, and it was the same with Huzi. Once we left Death region, we split up. I asked your second senior brother to change his sect so that he could go to any sect he wanted to train in. With his body as the Phantom King, he could change into a myriad of forms and fuse with the strengths of all clans. Then, he could reach great mastery in the Phantom Tao. I asked your third senior brother to join the Immortals Union and start from a young age, because he's too naive and straightforward. There are pros and cons to this, But if a jade is not polished, it will not be useful. I wanted him to suffer and hone the laws of his rune on the battlefield. I wanted him to walk down the Tao that belongs to him. As for me, I joined a race and became their blade to hone myself. Then, I would turn on that race and practice my murderous Tao. I had the three of us split up because I wanted us to use our own methods to search for the path to divine essence Star Ocean and search for you. If it wasn't because of the battle against Morning Tao sect, we would have gone to divine essence Star Ocean a long time ago. Eldest senior brother was silent for a moment before he spoke slowly. His words were calm, and he did not sound like he was in any danger. But Su Ming, who understood his eldest senior brother's personality, knew that the true experience would definitely be 100 times more difficult than what his eldest senior brother had described. Second update, I beg for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Chapter 1273. Su Ming was silent. He stared at the brand of the ghost face on his eldest senior brother's chest, then picked up the pot of wine and finished it in one gulp. Wine flowed out of the corners of his mouth and spilled on his body, but he did not care. Su Ming could not hold his liquor. In fact, while he would occasionally drink on his own, he had to use his cultivation base to refine it. But he did not do so today. Let's talk about you. You. Eldest senior brother sighed softly. There were certain things that he did not even need to ask to know. The youngest junior brother before him looked so unfamiliar that he had never seen him before. Clearly, he had possessed him. When eldest senior brother looked at him, he found his level of cultivation to be unfathomable. But it was precisely because of this that he could understand what Su Ming had gone through over the years. He must have had a narrow escape from death. He had been a puny cultivator in Earth cultivation realm in the past, but now he had become an almighty. The leap in his level of cultivation, the possession of his body, and all of this did not even need to be mentioned. As Su Ming drank, he spoke softly of his experiences from the moment he stepped into divine essence Star Ocean and laid on Crimson Flame Planet like a dead body. He did not say it with much conviction, but when his words fell into eldest senior brother's ears, he unknowingly drank a total of 10 pots of wine. Divine essence Star Ocean, the tribes, Ikang's foreign lands. Su Ming mumbled, as if he was telling the story, but also as if he was talking to himself. When eldest senior brother heard that Su Ming had found Tian Xiezi's tracks, he shuddered. When he heard Su Ming mention that his master had taken in his fourth disciple, he fell silent. In the end, when Su Ming told him about his experiences in the fifth ocean and his guesses, eldest senior brother's right hand trembled, and he did not speak. I don't know whether master was among those people, but I can sense that he was. Su Ming lowered his head and picked up a pot of wine. When he drank another pot, he became drunk. I possessed Ao Kong and used his identity to leave divine essence Star Ocean. I went to Morning Tao sect and became its dynast. I saw what I thought was my father at that time. Su Ming smiled. There was no anguish in his smile, only a carefree one. It was as if he was talking about someone else's story, and it had nothing to do with him. The seed of life extermination was just a joke. It was just a parasite. The dream of Dark Mountain did not allow me to retain any form of beauty. Even if I didn't want to understand it, I knew that it was fake. All of this was Su Xianyi's plan. I was just a part of it. Once it was completed, I would be wiped off. Everything that happened in the past echoed in eldest senior brother's ears as Su Ming drank pot after pot of wine, lingering for a long time without disappearing. So, you're saying that you created the sect known as Ninth Summit in the broken true Morning Tao world to turn true Morning Tao world into your law and will. In fact, you wanted to replace the will of this world so that it would belong to you? Eldest senior brother cast Su Ming a glance and said softly, but once you use the Ninth Summit as your name, there is no way Su Xian will not know about it. He will definitely be able to guess that you will make a comeback. Since you dare to do this, I don't believe that you didn't come prepared. That's right. Besides searching for all of you, I didn't care whether Su Xian, or anyone else knew about it. Even if they knew about it, it would be useless. What I need to do is control true Morning Tao world. When the whirlwind in the world beyond disappears and Saint Fire descends, with my status and power, even Saint Fire will have to think twice before doing anything. Otherwise, Su Xian, he could shatter a gap, and I, Su Ming, could imitate him and cause a true world to shatter. If there was no gap, I would not have been able to create another one out of thin air, but now that there's a gap, Arid Triad is no longer complete, which makes it much easier. If I use a true world to self-destruct, I can also create a gap. This is what Dark Dawn's camp needs, but it is definitely not what Saint Fire needs. In fact, I've thought that when the people from Dark Dawn's camp came, they would definitely have the same thoughts and preparations. I once guessed that this was also part of Su Xianyi's plan. He could foresee this sort of ending. Su Ming took a big gulp of wine and laughed loudly. Arid Triad is about to be destroyed, and even the power of heaven cannot reverse this. The four great true worlds are about to be destroyed, and it's impossible for them to reverse this. I know that this is the end, so I will naturally expand my forces of influence endlessly and increase my level of cultivation so that I can obtain a serendipity and a chance of survival in this disaster. If Arid Triad is destroyed, then if I can obtain a serendipity and a chance of survival, why can't I replace Arid Triad? What's so great about possessing a person? My thoughts are something that will make anyone who hears them think they're crazy, but I will still try. Possess Arid Triad expanse cosmos. Su Ming laughed loudly. His voice echoed in the air, but it did not spread through the area. No one could hear it. Only when he was in his current state and before his eldest senior brother, who was like a family member to him, would he reveal his terrifying ambition. Eldest senior brother's heart trembled furiously. He stared at Su Ming, at the carefree Su Ming who had just finished drinking. There was madness in his expression, and he also had the air of looking down on the entire world. He could vaguely see signs that Su Ming could destroy Saint Fire and overturn Dark Dawn. This was just what he felt. In fact, if anyone else saw it, they would find it laughable. A mere cultivator dared to say that he wanted to possess Arid Triad? This was already incredibly preposterous, and the feeling in his eldest senior brother's heart would make any other cultivator think that it was laughable and impossible. But at that moment, his eldest senior brother could clearly sense it. It was an indescribable presence. It was not the ripples of power, not the existence of a temperament, and neither was it a ripple that could change the environment around him. It was a presence that was formed when extreme madness, extreme destruction, extreme slaughter, and distortions intersected with each other to form a flame that could make a person's heart tremble. If you want to do this, then I will have a part in it. Eldest senior brother did not hesitate. Instead, he laughed hoarsely, and there was a heinous, murderous aura in his laughter. Su Ming picked up the pot of wine, brought it to his lips, and drank from it. However, when he was halfway through, he suddenly put down. His originally drunken eyes instantly shone with a brilliant light, and he stared at the galaxy in the distance. Eldest senior brother's expression changed, and he looked over as well. After a moment, he threw his head back and laughed loudly. He even stood up, and when he looked at Su Ming, a smile had long since appeared on his face. There was excitement in that smile, along with joy, and he was laughing loudly because he was drunk. Today, we must get drunk. Today, we will finally gather together in Ninth Summit after being separated for 1,000-something years. Eldest senior brother's laughter was hearty. As his voice echoed in space, it spread through the galaxy and even reached a lone ship charging towards them in the whirlwind beyond the ripple. On the lone boat, the gentle-looking man was no longer drinking. Instead, he was staring off into the distance. Excitement slowly appeared in his eyes, and the burly man behind him was staring ahead. Tears could be seen on his simple and honest face as he murmured to himself, "That's right. It's eldest senior brother's presence." Beside him, that's... When I wrote up to this point, I suddenly felt that I did not really know how to write. I have to think about it carefully and add the few hundred words missing from this chapter into tomorrow's chapter. I beg for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Chapter 1274. At that moment, Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole brought nearly 100,000 cultivators who had obeyed his will and joined Ninth Summit to deliver their brands of souls to the easternmost part of true Morning Dao world. They stopped in the region that was close to the barrier between the true worlds. In front of them were 9 huge burning incense sticks. Each of the 9 incense sticks was several hundred zhang thick and over 10,000 zhang long. From afar, they looked like 9 huge pillars that stood in the starry sky. However, it was unknown what they were supporting. Wisps of smoke rose from 3 of the 9 giant incense sticks, causing the surroundings to become hazy and vaguely visible. 6 of the 9 incense sticks had already been extinguished. Only 3 were still burning, as if they would burn for eternity. There was no end to them, but strangely, no matter how much they burned, their length did not seem to change. They still towered into the sky, giving all those who saw them a magnificent sight. This was heavenly incense. It was the heavenly incense rune, one of the 3 mysterious regions that had existed since ancient times in true Morning Dao world. No one knew who had set up this heavenly incense rune or when it had appeared. It was as if it had existed since true Morning Dao world had appeared. Over the course of many years, countless powerful warriors had come to this place in an attempt to break the heavenly incense rune and find its secrets, but no one had been able to do so. In the beginning, 9 incense sticks had burned at the same time, but now there were only 3 incense sticks left. They had borne witness to the changes of time and how true Morning Dao world had moved from its birth to its glory, then from its glory to its disaster. Morning Dao sect had once spent a large amount of manpower and resources to search for the secrets of the heavenly incense rune during its most glorious period, but in the end, it had come up empty-handed. Even Su Xian, he had investigated the place before, but he had found no answers. The mysterious veil of the heavenly incense rune did not seem to be something that cultivators could lift. It seemed to be waiting for the appearance of a living being who could unravel its secrets. But even after the incense sticks had been extinguished, that person still had not appeared. Su Xian, he had investigated it before, but he could not find any answers. The cultivators who descended from Saint Defire Expanse Cosmos had also investigated it, but they could not find any answers. It was as if the rune's age had surpassed that of Old Man Extermination. At that moment, Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole stood outside the heavenly incense rune and stared at the 9 gigantic heavenly incenses in the distant galaxy. He stared at the smoke rising from the burning 3 of them, and uncertainty appeared in his eyes. This is the heavenly incense rune. Together with the Immortals Union's Death region and the Sun's sinking talisman in the southwest, they're known as the 3 great mysteries of true Morning Dao world. Among them, the heavenly incense rune's mysteriousness comes from the fact that it was clearly not formed by heat. No one knows who set it up, and no one knows what will happen once all 9 incense sticks are extinguished. It was also because compared to the Lord, she could also feel that the closer she got to the heavenly incense array, the more her cultivation would boil, and there would be faint signs of a breakthrough. In fact, the closer she got, the more obvious this breakthrough would be. When she completely broke through, her cultivation would skyrocket. However, all of this was fake. Although it looked like he was increasing his cultivation base, it was actually just an illusion. Once he left this place, everything would return to normal. Heavenly Incense Rune has a strange attraction to the cultivators of true Morning Dao world. Once they got close to it and experienced the feeling of his cultivation base increasing, they would be unable to forget it for the rest of their lives, and they would often want to come here. However, if they got close to it more than 3 times, they would no longer be able to walk out. Instead, they would walk into the 9 incense sticks as if they had lost their intelligence. Once they fused with them, their bodies and souls would be destroyed. This is the only way to enter the Heavenly Incense Rune, but all those who step into it will die, which is why over time, no cultivator will come to this place unless it is absolutely necessary. Unless their cultivation base has been stuck at a bottleneck for a long period of time, only then will they come here in search of a fake breakthrough to gain an epiphany. In conclusion, within 3 times, you can treat this heavenly incense rune as a mirror. This mirror can reflect your level of cultivation and show you which peak you can reach in the future, Miao Feng said in a low voice while staring at the heavenly incense rune in the distance. The old man, surnamed Miao, said softly as he looked at the heavenly incense array in the distance. He was forcefully suppressing his urge to walk over. Fortunately, the heavenly incense array was not overbearing, and it was not impossible to suppress one's urge. As long as one's willpower was slightly firm, they could just barely suppress it. Once they left the range, they would return to normal. Then what about the sun-sinking talisman you mentioned previously? Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole asked faintly. That sun-sinking talisman seems to be even more mysterious. It's a talisman that has been placed in the southwest of true Morning Dao world for countless years. That talisman will shine once every 100 years. Every single time it shines, all the cultivation planets in true Morning Dao world that were supposed to be night will remain dark, but the cultivation planets that are supposed to be in daylight will instantly look as if the sun has been forcefully sunk, and they will turn into night. That is why that mysterious talisman is known as sun-sinking talisman. Besides this, the sun-sinking talisman can absorb all light around it. All things that shine will disappear, and night will return to the area. However, compared to the heavenly incense rune, the talisman seems to be easier for cultivators to come into contact with. As long as they can walk into the darkness and approach the talisman, they can investigate and copy it at will. In fact, they can even use all sorts of methods to try to subdue it, but over the course of countless years, no one has ever heard of anyone taking the sun-sinking talisman for their own use. No matter how time passes, no matter how the universe changes, whether it is a disaster or a flourishing age, it will still exist in the southwest, as if it is an eternal existence. As for the third mystery, it's the Immortals Union's Death region. There's a huge vortex there, and it's rumored that it leads to another world. It's a world where the dead live. The old man named Miao told them everything he knew. Su Ming's clone stared at the 9 burning incense sticks. Ripples rose in his body, and a feeling as if his physical body was about to become stronger rose in him. It was as if there were countless ants crawling in his body, causing him to itch from the inside out, but he could not scratch them. He could only endure the increasingly stronger urge that was gathering in the midst of the numbing itch. That urge even agitated the portion of Su Ming's true soul in the clone, causing ripples to appear in it, but it was not impossible to suppress them. Soon, they were forced down. The clone's expression turned dark. He cast a glance at the 9 incense sticks in the distance again, then turned around, intending to leave. However, at the instant Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole was about to leave, one of the 3 heavenly incense sticks that were still burning suddenly extinguished. From ancient times until now, there have been 9 burning heavenly incense sticks. As time passed, one by one, they were extinguished. Now, however, one of them was gone. From now on, the heavenly incense spell formation would only have 2 burning incense sticks. At the instant the 3rd incense stick was extinguished, a wave of power that was stronger than before spread out in an unseen manner. In an instant, it affected Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole and the 100,000 cultivators behind him. During that instant, Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole shuddered violently. The feeling of him swiftly becoming stronger erupted violently and suppressed the portion of Su Ming's soul, causing him to throw his head back and roar before charging towards Tianxiang. It was as if the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole no longer belonged to Su Ming. This sort of thing had never happened in the history of the Abyss Builders, because the Abyss Builders' inborn ability allowed them to form clones that were not that much different from their real bodies. One soul and multiple bodies. This was the Abyss Builders' perfection. Yet at that moment, the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole seemed to have lost control. If Su Ming noticed this, his heart would definitely tremble. At the same time, the 100,000 cultivators behind him, including the old man named Miao, all looked as if they had gone mad. They only knew that they had to get closer to the heavenly incense, because the closer they got, the faster their levels of cultivation would increase. Crazed delight appeared at the corners of their lips, but it hid the confusion on their faces. When the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole suppressed the portion of Su Ming's soul outside the heavenly incense rune and lost control, a smile appeared on Su Ming's face even though he was drunk. His eldest senior brother was by his side, and the two of them stared at the whirlwind in the galaxy beyond the ripple. A lone ship was charging towards them at an incredible speed. The ship was originally not heading in that direction. It was about to move through another region, but Su Ming's divine sense saw them, and they also noticed their eldest senior brother's presence. That presence seemed to be guiding them, causing the lone ship to change its direction and charge towards them. As the ship drew closer, it shot out of the whirlwind, touched the white ripple, and rushed into it. At that instant, Su Ming saw the people on the ship with his naked eye. His gaze automatically ignored the others and only focused on two men. One of them was as gentle as a flower, and the other was as built as a tiger. He stared at them, and the smile on his face was one of happiness that had rarely appeared over the course of thousands of years. His eldest senior brother stood on the ship. He did not have a head, but the murderous aura spreading out from his body had completely disappeared. In its place was joy. Perhaps it would be difficult for the others to notice it, but Su Ming could see it clearly. The ship drew closer, and the man who looked like a flower stared at the two figures staring at them in a daze. The headless man, as well as the slightly thin and frail man beside him, had an unfamiliar face, but the excitement in his eyes and the faint feeling of brotherhood between them caused the man who looked like a flower to shudder. Hu Zi, who was standing behind him, also had his eyes fixed on Su Ming. Slowly, he started laughing loudly, and as he laughed, tears fell down his cheeks. With one move, he rushed out of the lone ship and charged towards Su Ming. Hu Zi had always been the one who was the least skilled at hiding his emotions among Su Ming's senior brothers. If he wanted to cry, he would cry, and if he wanted to laugh, he would laugh. His simple and honest personality was something that could not be changed no matter how much he went through. Perhaps he had learned how to hide his emotions before others, or perhaps he had learned how to hide killing intent in his heart, even though he was laughing loudly in front of others. However, everything he had learned seemed to have melted away before his master and his brothers, disappearing without a trace. He took a huge step forward and used the fastest speed he could muster in his life to instantly appear before Su Ming. He cast him a scrutinizing glance, and with tears in his eyes, he swiftly hugged the person who looked rather unfamiliar to him. In fact, even to his divine sense, he was still unfamiliar, but his instincts told him that this person before him was his youngest junior brother, who he had been separated from for many years and who he often thought about in his dreams. That smile might have been on another person's face, but it was his youngest junior brother's smile. The excitement in his eyes might have changed, but the sincerity in that excitement was an emotion that no one else could possess. If they did not share the same ninth summit, it would have been impossible for this smile and gaze to appear. Even if their appearances were different, Hu Zi was certain that he would not be mistaken. Youngest junior brother. Hu Zi could not stop his tears from falling. He remembered how he had protected the ninth summit alone when he was still in the land of berserkers. He had faced the torment from the outsiders, and, as he waited in endless pain, he had always believed that he had to protect his home, because one of these days his senior brothers and junior brothers would return home. He could not let them not have a home. He could not let his senior brothers and junior brothers not have a place to gather once they lost the ninth summit, because he was afraid that once the ninth summit was gone, he would no longer be able to see his master and junior brothers scattered in the universe. He also remembered the excitement and tears he had felt when he saw Su Ming return. Compared to his other two senior brothers, Hu Zi could be willful and talk nonsense, but he could not when he was with Su Ming. Even if his mind was still that of a child's, he still remembered that he was Su Ming's senior brother. He still remembered that Su Ming was his youngest junior brother, and he still remembered the ninth summit's principles. He hugged Su Ming and started crying. Youngest junior brother, it's all my fault. If I had been strong in the past, I would have beaten up that damn ancient that forced you to enter the barren lands of divine essence. After you left, I trained madly, but no matter how much I trained, I missed you. When I thought about you being alone in the barren lands of divine essence, I felt terrible. I wanted to go mad, and I wanted to kill. Huzi was rambling a little incoherently. His voice was like thunder, but it did not travel too far. He did not want anyone who should not be able to hear him. Su Ming stared at Huzi, who was hugging him. This was his third senior brother, Huzi, who had walked up to him and patted his chest after he entered the ninth summit. He was a simple and honest man who could give up his life for the ninth summit and his senior brothers. He was the senior brother who had always existed in Su Ming's memories. Compared to his respect towards his eldest senior brother and his resignation towards his second senior brother, the brother Su Ming had been the most worried about when he left in the past was Huzi, who was hugging him as if he would never grow up. In fact, there were times when Su Ming felt that he should be Huzi's senior brother and not his youngest junior brother. With a smile on his face, Su Ming hugged Huzi and whispered softly, "Huzi, don't cry." He had said the same words many years ago. Right then, when Su Ming said them after they reunited, more tears fell from Huzi's eyes. He patted Su Ming's body in excitement. Chapter 1275. Compared to Huzi, who had let out his emotions without hiding or holding anything back in his excitement, and hugged Su Ming as he cried his heart out, to the point that his tears drenched Su Ming's robes, the flower-like second senior brother who had walked down from the lone ship behind, Huzi had a smile on his face. That smile contained deep joy and gratification. He looked at Su Ming, ignoring the unfamiliar face, as if he was looking at Su Ming's soul. "It's good that you're fine. I told you that our youngest junior brother of the ninth summit is a miracle that can grow as quickly as weeds, even if he's sent to an even more dangerous place. Forget that divine essence star ocean. Even if it's an even more dangerous place, as long as we walk out of the ninth summit, we will definitely be able to survive, and our lives will only get better. I have to say, there are times when I envy our master. His level of cultivation might be average, but when it comes to taking in disciples, there is no one in the universe who can compare to him." Second senior brother smiled faintly and opened a fan in his right hand with a whoosh. He let out a few fake coughs and lifted his head to look at the galaxy, looking as if he was preparing something. Eldest senior brother was momentarily stunned by it. "I've only reunited with second senior brother not too long ago. Right now, he no longer changes his personality and goes to play with his plants at night, always feeling as if someone is stealing his herbs. Instead, he has another strange hobby. He likes to recite poems." Huzi quickly said and reminded Su Ming, an eldest senior brother, with a strange expression on his face. "During such a beautiful time, we brothers and sisters of the ninth summit have reunited. I suddenly had the urge to recite a poem for all of you from the ninth summit." Second senior brother let out a fake cough and swept his gaze past Su Ming and the others. He waved the fan in his hand a few times, and his eyes lit up. Huzi immediately put on a long face, looking resigned. Eldest senior brother had a bad feeling about this and took a few steps back. Su Ming stared at second senior brother's demeanor in a daze. He had never heard his second senior brother recite poems before. In fact, he did not even know what poetry was. He was just clueless about it. While Su Ming was listening to him attentively, second senior brother suddenly shouted. That shout made Huzi take a few steps back, and a murderous aura around eldest senior brother appeared swiftly. Clearly, he was stunned. Su Ming's heart let out a loud thump. The shout was too sudden, and there was even a faint hint of forlornness in it, causing him to almost instinctively spread his divine sense outwards. The ninth summit. Second senior brother shook his head with an intoxicated look on his face. His eyes were half closed, and he looked as if he was immersed in the aftertaste of his poem. Su Ming was stunned. His eldest senior brother was also clearly stunned. Hu Zi blinked, and a puzzled expression appeared on his face. This time, even the beautiful women who had followed second senior brother down from the boat, and the beautiful woman who was second senior brother's master before becoming his lover also hesitated for a moment and did not speak immediately. Su Ming let out a fake cough. He did not want to interrupt his second senior brother's self-indulgence, but he could not help but ask, "Ahem, second senior brother, what happened after that?" What then? That's all. I've finished reciting my poem. Could it be that you didn't sense the charm in my poem? Could it be that you didn't sense the emotions contained in my poem? Could it be that you really didn't see my longing for you in the ninth summit for my poem? Second senior brother looked as if he was lonely at the top. He was slightly sentimental, slightly resigned, and a little lonely because it was difficult for him to find someone who understood his poem. Eldest senior brother fell silent. He instinctively loosened his grip, and the battle axe appeared in his hand. Hu Zi looked at Su Ming, then at his eldest senior brother. Suddenly, a ferocious smile appeared on his lips, and he clenched his fists. Su Ming fell silent. He smiled wryly as he looked at his second senior brother, who was still immersed in his poem and looked as if he was asking for a beating. He suddenly felt that he was still the same person who liked to turn his face sideways under the sun and let the sun shine on that side of his face. He thought that this appearance was very sunny, very manly, and could attract the gazes of the opposite sex. At that time, he was much less affected by his self-indulgence. That's a good poem. Young master, that's a good poem. That's right. There's a lot of emotions contained in that poem. It's definitely not something ordinary. That's right. This poem should only exist in the heavens, not in the world. This poem. The women behind second senior brother quickly spoke up, but as they spoke, under Su Ming's strange gaze, the women, including the beautiful woman, could not help but blush, and they found themselves unable to continue speaking. The area was silent. Yet at that moment, a ray of black light suddenly flew out from Su Ming's storage bag. Once it turned into the bald crane, it stared at second senior brother with a face full of admiration, and with a voice that sounded like that of a drake, it started roaring loudly. Good poem. This is definitely a good poem. How many years has it been since I heard a poem filled with such emotions? The first one should be because it sighed because it saw eldest senior brother. The second one should be because it was surprised that it could think of this sort of poem. The third one is clearly a little gloomy, and it should be because it thought that Hu Zi wouldn't understand it. The third one is filled with joy because it saw little boy Su. It's especially so for the last four words. O Ninth Summit, it's a masterpiece. This is a masterpiece. The bald crane shuddered and started roaring in excitement. When it spoke, the wry smile on Su Ming's face became even stronger. Eldest senior brother slowly lifted his battle axe and rubbed it against his thigh a few times. Only Hu Zi was staring at the bald crane with a dumbfounded expression. There was a contemplative look on his face, as if he was truly mulling over the meaning behind the poem. Second senior brother shuddered. He turned his body sideways and scrutinized the bald crane. After some time, excitement appeared on his face. My soulmate. This is what I call a soulmate. Fellow Taoist, you have great literary talent. You are truly the most talented person I've met in my life besides myself. You actually managed to think of the charm and meaning that I haven't thought of before. It's rare for me to meet a soulmate in life. This won't do. Today, I'm going to break my rule of reciting at most one poem every day. I'm going to recite another poem to celebrate meeting a soulmate here. Second senior brother said excitedly. Ever since he learned how to recite poems, he had always thought that it was much better than looking at the side of his face under the sun. That was why his interest grew stronger, and he had indeed never met a worthy opponent. There might not be many people who could understand him, but he was happy to entertain himself. However, he did feel a little regretful in his heart. Once he heard the bald crane's words, his spirits were lifted. He suddenly felt that his literary talent had increased by leaps and bounds without his knowledge. In his great joy, He quickly began to recite another poem. Who's Z? Youngest junior brother. Let's help him wake up. It's been years since we last met, and the moment we meet, he's so noisy. Reciting poems? What nonsense is he reciting? Eldest senior brother let out a cold harumph and took a step forward. When second senior brother closed his eyes and immersed himself in the poem after much difficulty, he opened his eyes and was just about to speak when eldest senior brother kicked him. Huzi smiled ferociously and quickly ran over. He lifted his body and took a step forward while explaining himself. Second senior brother, you can't blame me for this. I don't want to hit you either, but eldest senior brother has spoken. I cannot listen to him. Recite poems all the way. Huzi rolled up his sleeves, and excitement appeared on his face. Su Ming blinked. He looked at his second senior brother, who was screaming in pain in eldest senior brother and Huzi's hands, and he felt a little tempted. He let out a fake cough and mimicked Huzi's words. Second senior brother, you really can't blame me for this. As he spoke, he quickly walked over and kicked him. You can't blame me for this, second senior brother. Eldest senior brother asked me to do it. Master isn't here, so I have to listen to eldest senior brother's words. Even if you hit me, I'll still recite poems. Baldy, it's been a long time since we last met. Second senior brother struggled to speak, looking as if he would absolutely not submit. The bald crane shuddered and quickly took a few steps back. It stared at the four senior brothers in front of it with its skin crawling, and suddenly felt that it was very dangerous for it to come out of Su Ming's storage bag, just like that, especially when it heard that second senior brother was still reciting poems. It immediately took a few more steps back, but it still felt that it was impossible for it to deny that it had anything to do with Su Ming by doing this. Hence, it lifted its right claw, and with a swing, it turned into a fan. It quickly ran around Su Ming and the others and fanned them. My lords, hit me as much as you want. I'll help you fan away your sweat. That kick of yours is too sharp. The long arc formed by that kick shook the sky and earth. Eldest grandpa, that was a good punch. That punch stirred up wind, and it's definitely not something ordinary. This is amazing. Mr. Su, that one finger of yours shook the heavens. The grace and rhythm of that one finger is enough for other cultivators to learn for 10,000 years before they can understand the slightest bit of it. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, a table appeared on the spot. Su Ming and the other three sat there, while the bald crane poured wine for them attentively with a fawning look on its face. Second senior brother's bruised and swollen face made him look like he was about to be disfigured, and it made the bald crane feel uneasy. Once it finished pouring wine, it quickly returned to stand behind Su Ming and turned into a black kitten. It put on an incredibly adorable look to avoid following in second senior brother's footsteps. I've become much more clear-headed after being beaten up by all of you. I won't be reciting poems anymore. Youngest junior brother, I'm happy for you that you managed to come out of divine essence, Star Ocean. Let's drink. A gentle smile appeared on second senior brother's face. He did not care about his bruised and swollen face at that moment. He picked up his wine cup and took a big gulp. While he drank, his face squirmed. He lifted his right hand and struck his head. Black smoke immediately rose, and when it disappeared, his face returned to normal. He smiled and looked at Su Ming, Huzi, and eldest senior brother. Suddenly, he lifted his left hand and swung it behind him. The beautiful women behind him immediately moved forward. They formed seals and sent their hands forward, turning into rays of white light that gathered above second senior brother's head. They turned into a pillar of light that was similar to sunlight that shone on the side of his face. Second senior brother lifted his chin and looked at the crowd with a smile on his face. What do you think now? Eldest senior brother let out a long sigh and patted his pot of wine. Immediately, all the wine in it was drunk. Huzi rubbed his eyes and was momentarily stunned. Then, admiration appeared on his face. He admired second senior brother's way of thinking. It was truly a strange thing. Su Ming laughed. On that day, he laughed more than he had done in the past 1,000-something years. Just as he was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. A brilliant light shone in his eyes, and he looked towards the east. 7,000 words, and 1,000 of them will be added to yesterday's. Chapter 1276. The change in Su Ming's expression, his action of looking towards the east, and the brilliant light that shone in his eyes instantly caused eldest senior brother's right hand to freeze on the pot of wine. Hu Zi's pupil shrank as he stared at Su Ming. Second senior brother's expression instantly changed from its previous playful expression. In fact, there was even a grim, murderous look on his face when he looked towards Su Ming. What happened? Eldest senior brother asked in a low voice. As Su Ming's expression changed, eldest senior brother spoke, and the four senior brothers became solemn. An oppressive presence immediately enveloped the area, causing the women who followed second senior brother to look shocked. What shocked them was that the solemn expressions of the senior brothers had caused the galaxy around them to become oppressive. The whirlwind beyond the ripple looked as if it had come to a standstill, and everything in the area instantly fell into dead silence. Eldest senior brother's murderous aura, second senior brother's strange and enchanting aura, and Hu Zi's valiant madness filled their bodies at that moment, but they did not erupt. It was as if with just one word from Su Ming, the three of them would give up everything for their youngest junior brother. It was not because Su Ming's level of cultivation was the highest, nor was it because the other three had to listen to him. In fact, no matter how high Su Ming's level of cultivation was, if he was not their youngest junior brother, they would not even spare him a glance. It was because Su Ming was a member of Ninth Summit. He was their youngest junior brother. It's nothing. One of my clones is in the east, and it lost its connection with me. There's a power suppressing my soul in that clone. Su Ming's expression returned to calmness, and he spoke faintly. East. Hu Zi, eldest senior brother said faintly. The moment he finished speaking, Hu Zi grinned ferociously. He moved forward and placed his right hand on Su Ming's shoulder. He closed his eyes, and at the instant he did so, Su Ming noticed that Hu Zi's presence had disappeared without a trace. Not even his divine sense could detect it. If it was not because he could see it with his naked eye, it would have been difficult for him to notice that Hu Zi still existed. When Hu Zi left the land of berserkers in the past, he already had some achievements in his dream Dao. So many years have passed, and he has gone through a lot of things, so he must have become even more skilled in this art. With this art, he can enter your dreams and use what you sense to see that portion of your soul. As eldest senior brother spoke slowly, Hu Zi rolled his eyes and revealed his white eyes. They shone with a strange white light. Due east, there are 9 huge incense sticks. 7 are extinguished, 2 are burning, 100,000 cultivators. Hu Zi came to a halt and closed his eyes. After a moment, when he reopened them, he lifted his right hand from Su Ming's shoulder. After a moment of pensive silence, he formed a seal and pointed at the air. Immediately, a picture appeared in space. The image was a bit blurry, but it was still possible to see it clearly. It was a starry sky, and a heavenly incense array towered in the starry sky. 2 incense sticks burned, and around them, 100,000 cultivators sat cross-legged, their faces filled with excitement. In front of these people, near the location of the second incense stick, was a figure sitting cross-legged. That figure's expression was twisted, and his eyes were closed, as if he was struggling. His fleshly body wriggled, as if he was experiencing some indescribable pain. However, there was an expression of extreme comfort on his face. That figure was naturally Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. Heavenly incense rune. Second senior brother's pupil shrank. He stared at the 9 huge incense sticks in the illusory picture and spoke slowly in a low voice. No wonder. Youngest junior brother, your clone is beside the heavenly incense rune, so it's only natural that the connection between you and the clone will be severed, because besides the heavenly incense rune giving people the false feeling of reaching a breakthrough in their levels of cultivation, there's also a secret that most outsiders do not know about. That place can allow a person's clone to be severed from their real body, and it can also allow the clone to form its own will. That's why the Almighties in true morning Tao world never send their clones to the heavenly incense rune. But youngest junior brother, your clone is clearly still struggling. This is a little strange. Based on my understanding, he shouldn't be struggling right now. He should have completely severed the soul tendrils from you. Second senior brother frowned and looked at Su Ming. Heavenly incense rune. Su Ming stared at the illusory picture, and a brilliant light shone in his eyes. I've heard of this heavenly incense rune before. Rumors say that this rune has existed since true Morning Tao world appeared, and by the looks of it, it wasn't formed naturally. It was set up, and in the beginning, all 9 of the incense sticks were burning, but as time passed, they were extinguished one after another. Right now, only 2 of them are still burning. It's not 2. Before this, there were 3 of them. At the very least, before the whirlwind in the galaxy appeared, 3 of them were burning. I went to this heavenly incense rune once before. This place is indeed a rune, but the ancient age of this rune is not something I can break. In fact, I have a feeling that this heavenly incense rune is similar to me in certain aspects, Huzi said in a low voice. When he said these words, a thought immediately appeared in Su Ming and the others' hearts. Huzi's original form was the vast formation that enveloped Deathland, and he was a part of the formation. His spiritual sense was taken away by Tian Xiezi in some ingenious way, which allowed him to take the form of a human, and he was taken in as his disciple. Yet at the end of the day, Huzi was another life form formed by the rune. If he said that this heavenly incense rune was similar to him, then it was enough to tell them that there was a problem. When I went there in the past, I noticed that there was something strange about this heavenly incense rune. I sensed that it was an empty rune, and after some research, I might not have been able to break this rune and find its deepest secrets, but I could make a general deduction that this heavenly incense rune is in truth an ancient summoning rune. The distance of this rune's summoning should be unimaginable, but it's clear that too much time has passed and it has lost its effect. Unless we can light up the 9 incense sticks again, it won't be effective. The freezing glare in Su Ming's eyes faded away, and he stood up. My senior brothers and I have just reunited with each other, and something like this happened. Eldest senior brothers, rest for the time being. I will go to this heavenly incense rune and see just what sort of mysteries this rune has that made it dare to break the portion of my soul. Su Ming said flatly, but as he stood up, the natural presence of a powerful warrior spread out from his body. Oh well, let Huzi go with you. He's skilled in the transformation of runes, so he can work with you. As for me and your second senior brother, since you want Ninth Summit to become the only sect in true Morning Tao world during the disaster, then this matter is no longer just about you alone. This is a matter for all of us in Ninth Summit. I will stay here with your second senior brother and build Ninth Summit, eldest senior brother said slowly after a moment of pensive silence. The matter of establishing a sect is not as simple as recruiting disciples. There are still many things that need to be done. At the very least, we need a sect and an orthodoxy. Leave this matter to me and eldest senior brother. Second senior brother opened the fan in his hand and smiled elegantly. Huzi grinned and looked at Su Ming. Su Ming nodded. He wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to eldest senior brother and second senior brother. When he turned around, he lifted his right hand and pointed at the white ripple. It immediately spread out by a large circle, and with a buzz, the ring of the supreme treasure appeared. It charged towards Su Ming and wrapped itself around his right index finger. Even though Su Ming had taken away the supreme treasure, the ripple was still as strong as before and could still shake the whirlwind. This was a projection left behind by Su Ming while he controlled the supreme treasure and could maintain the ripple for around 100 years. This was a preparation for all eventualities. With the ripple around, Ninth Summit would have a foundation. The ripple in this place can shake the whirlwind. Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, fuse your divine senses into it, and you can control the ripple. This is a projection of the treasure I left behind to send your divine thoughts to me. Su Ming cast a glance at his eldest senior brother and second senior brother again, then turned into a long arc and charged into the air. Huzi laughed by the side and followed. A thought appeared in the bald crane's head, and it quickly followed. As long arcs shone, Su Ming and Hu Zi's figures disappeared. Once Su Ming left, eldest senior brother and second senior brother did not have any free time. Instead, they talked about everything they needed to build Ninth Summit before they took action on their own. Su Ming was so quick that in an instant, he traveled through endless space. Hu Zi was not much slower. He took huge strides forward, drinking as he charged forward. However, this was clearly not Su Ming's full speed, but he did not push his speed to its limit. Even if the connection between him and his clone had been broken, there was no point in being anxious. The two of them charged through the galaxy. Wherever they went, the whirlwind would tumble backwards and a huge gap would be torn open. Only when the two of them had left for a long time did the gap slowly disappear by the whirlwind. In just a few days, Su Ming and Hu Zi arrived in the area of the heavenly incense rune with a speed that made them look as if they were shifting. When they were several hundreds of thousands of feet away, the whirlwind thinned out and the galaxy distorted, and Su Ming and Hu Zi walked out. The moment they appeared, Su Ming immediately saw the 9 heavenly incenses in the distance. They were 100,000 feet tall, and they were surrounded by 9 incense sticks, giving off an incredibly majestic feeling. 2 of the burning heavenly incenses let out wisps of smoke that floated in the galaxy. The heads of the incense sticks flickered, and they were hidden in the wisps of smoke, causing all those who saw them to be unable to help themselves but be attracted to them. This is the heavenly incense rune, Hu Zi said in a low voice while standing beside Su Ming. There was a solemn expression on his honest face at that moment. Su Ming's gaze remained as calm as ever, but his pupils shrank slightly. Not only did he see the huge heavenly incense rune, he also saw the 100,000 cultivators meditating under the heavenly incense in the distance. Their expressions were different, but all of them were filled with madness and a figure sitting almost right next to the second burning heavenly incense. That figure was surrounded by wisps of smoke, making him look rather indistinct. It was Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. When Su Ming looked at the clone he was so familiar with in the past, perhaps it was because of the indistinct wisps of smoke, but it gave him a feeling of unfamiliarity. Chapter 1277. Youngest junior brother, is it your clone? Hu Zi's gaze landed on Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole under the second incense stick, and his pupils shrank slightly. When he cast the divine ability, just now, he could only see pictures and could not sense the specifics of his level of cultivation. However, at that moment, when he saw Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole, he immediately sensed a powerful, mighty pressure. That mighty pressure was not born from his cultivation base, but from a powerful power that seemed to be about to erupt from his body. The strength of his physical body shocked Hu Zi. After all, he also practiced physical body cultivation. As for his cultivation base, he might have focused mainly on Dream Dao, but in truth he did not like Dream Dao. Instead, he was more inclined towards his physical body. Because of that, he understood better than anyone else just how terrifying the power he could bring forth with his physical body was. When he spoke, Hu Zi turned his head to look at Su Ming. When he saw Su Ming nod, he sucked in a sharp breath in his heart. He had previously seen Su Ming's level of cultivation, and it seemed like he had just moved from Mastery Realm to Fate Realm not too long ago. Yet at that moment, he suddenly realized that even his eldest senior brother and second senior brother had misjudged his youngest junior brother's true combat abilities. It's just a clone, and he's already able to bring forth such mighty pressure from me. Heh. Ninth Summit is destined to rise to power. Just how strong is youngest junior brother's true level of cultivation? Hu Zi grinned, looking incredibly happy. He stared at the 9 incense sticks, and with a calm expression, Su Ming took huge strides forward. Hu Zi quickly followed behind him. As for the bald crane, it also swaggered forward. In its eyes, there was practically no longer anything in true Morning Dao world that could threaten Su Ming. Once the supreme treasure appeared, Su Ming would be able to fight against even almighties in Death Realm. Even if he ran into sublime paragons, and Su Ming was not their opponent, it would be incredibly easy for him to retreat unscathed. Because of that, there was nothing for the bald crane to be afraid of. Su Ming did not move quickly. As he approached the heavenly incense rune, a feeling as if his cultivation base was boiling appeared in his body. The closer he got to the heavenly incense rune, the livelier his cultivation base became, as if he was about to reach a breakthrough. As he closed in, hints of epiphany suddenly appeared in Su Ming's mind. However, these epiphanies were rather indistinct, causing Su Ming to be unable to see them clearly. They seemed to have appeared out of thin air. When they echoed in Su Ming's mind, they fused with his cultivation base, causing him to have a strong feeling that his cultivation base was about to break through the fate of the world around him and turn into the fate of his heart. This change made a thought appear in Su Ming's heart. He stopped moving and turned his head around to look at Hu Zi. By then, Hu Zi's face had already turned incredibly grave. A large amount of runic symbols were flashing in his eyes, and a large amount of distortions appeared around his body. Those distortions seemed to have turned into a rune that enveloped Hu Zi within. Hu Zi, wait for me here. Observe the heavenly incense rune. If anything happens to the rune, you'll be able to notice it in time and tell me. Su Ming could tell that Hu Zi was in a difficult situation. Unless he completely gave up on fighting back like the 100,000 cultivators and sat down to train, if there was any form of resistance, then as he got closer to the rune, things would become increasingly difficult. Su Ming had the supreme treasure, the ring. Once danger appeared, it would not be difficult for him to escape unscathed, but if Hu Zi ventured deeper into the rune, then with his status as the spirit of the rune, he might run into an accident. That was why Su Ming said those words and told Hu Zi to wait. Hu Zi hesitated for a moment before he nodded. He knew that since he was also a spirit of the rune, he could sense it even more strongly than the others. In fact, the faint feeling of being called out to him also surpassed that of the others. He had not ventured too deep into the rune in the past, and if it were not for Su Ming, he would not have come to this place. Hu Zi, this person likes to act rashly, so I volunteer to watch over him. Little boy Su, don't worry, I won't let him act rashly. A thought appeared in the bald crane's head, and it immediately stopped moving. It put on an expression as if it was very brave and willing to sacrifice everything for Su Ming. But in truth, when it got closer, it felt as if its soul was boiling. This was not a good sign. Once it boiled to its limit, then its soul would scatter. It was so terrified that it quickly stopped moving, but it felt that it could not tarnish its reputation, which was why it emphasized it. Su Ming cast the bald crane a glance with the ghost of a smile on his face, then turned around and walked towards the heavenly incense rune. His footsteps were not quick, and his speed was not fast either, but with each step he took, the galaxy would tremble slightly. A mighty pressure spreading out from Su Ming's body spread out with increasing strength, and it seemed to be fighting against the heavenly incense rune. When Su Ming walked past the 100,000 cultivators, the mighty pressure spreading out from his body had already reached its peak. But what the others could not see was that while Su Ming's eyes were still filled with determination, a hint of hesitation had appeared in them. This hesitation was because he had a feeling that his level of cultivation had reached a breakthrough in this place. But he could clearly sense that this breakthrough was an illusion and not real, but the feeling was incredibly strong. He had broken through the fate of the world around him and obtained his own fate, allowing him to reach perfection in Fate Realm. This rune is strange. Su Ming did not stop moving. With a step, he walked past the region where the 100,000 people were and stepped into a spot that was less than 10,000 feet away from the heavenly incense rune. Not too far away from Su Ming was the spot where his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole was meditating. Su Ming's expression was relaxed, but the hesitation in his eyes had turned into a cold glare. He continued moving forward at a slow pace, but when he was far away from the heavenly incense rune, he might have seemed slow, but right then, when he was only 10,000 feet away from the rune, even though his pace and speed were the same, there was no way for him to compare them. His speed was so quick that he instantly covered several thousands of feet. This scene caused Hu Zi to suck in a sharp breath in his heart. Shock appeared in his eyes. He could tell that Su Ming still retained a clear mind, but the level of cultivation and determination required for him to be able to do so at such a distance was incredibly terrifying. Haha, this is nothing. It's just a drizzle. When the bald crane saw the shock on Hu Zi's face, it instantly put on a smug look. What about youngest junior brother's level of cultivation? Hu Zi hesitated for a moment before he looked at the bald crane. That's hard to say. In any case, there aren't many people who can kill him right now. Of course, I'm talking about the 4 great true worlds. The bald crane became even more smug, as if it had been waiting for Hu Zi to ask about it since a long time ago. Right then, when Hu Zi spoke, it immediately answered. I never lie. Have you heard of the ancient gods? They're the tall giants. Ancient gods? You should be talking about the grand immortals of the ancient races. It's only natural that I've seen them before. Su Ming killed one just now, but he did so with my help. The bald crane might have wanted to make light of the matter, but the smug look on its face made it seem as if it was not talking about Su Ming, but itself. It still showed off its boastful attitude. Hu Zi shook his head vigorously. There was a slight buzzing in his ears. He knew just how strong the ancient gods were. He had seen them with his own eyes, and at that moment, a huge storm raged in his heart. Ahem, more accurately speaking, he killed 2 of them. They're at the place where you were drinking just now. There was an ancient god there, but he was devoured by Su Ming. Of course, he also did so with my help, the bald crane added with a smug look on its face. While Hu Zi and the bald crane spoke, Su Ming had already walked several thousands of feet in a relaxed manner. He arrived at the spot where his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole was meditating. He stood there and cast a glance at the heavenly incense rune. At that moment, the ripples of power in his body grew stronger, but it was something that could not be seen on the surface. This intensity made it seem like if Su Ming took a few more steps, he would be able to break through Fate Realm and step in a Life Realm. In fact, Su Ming had a strong feeling that if he continued walking down this path, not only would he be able to break through Life Realm, he would even be able to break through Death Realm and even Sublime Paragon Realm. This feeling was so strong that it turned into a great temptation. Even if he knew that it was fake, he still found it difficult to suppress the urge. This urge was enough to make people overlook the disappearance of their souls while they seemed to be reaching a breakthrough in their levels of cultivation. All those who stepped into this place would sense their souls continuously disappearing at the same time they reached a breakthrough in their levels of cultivation. It was as if all of this was fake. Besides the strangeness of the heavenly incense rune, most of it was done through the disappearance of their souls. That was why Su Ming lost contact with the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole in this place, because the soul in the clone had completely disappeared. Su Ming stood beside the clone, and a pensive look appeared on his face. After a moment, he lifted his right hand and brought it down on the top of the clone's skull, but at the instant his right hand landed, the clone opened his eyes. Gray light shone in them, along with a will and a freezing glare that did not belong to Su Ming. He moved, intending to avoid Su Ming's right hand. In fact, a powerful physical power erupted from the clone's body at that instant. Ripples that looked as if they were about to explode rose up with a bang and charged towards Su Ming to devour him. Su Ming's expression remained calm, and a hint of derision appeared at the corners of his lips. His right hand did not stop moving. He maintained his previous speed and brought it down on the top of the clone's skull. A ripple spread out from the ring on his right index finger, and the clone shuddered. He could not get up. Crazed struggle appeared in the gray light in his eyes, but it did not last for long. Su Ming's right hand struck the top of the clone's skull. Without a single sound, the gray light in the clone's eyes disappeared. Gradually, a brilliant light that belonged to Su Ming appeared in the clone's eyes like a ball of fire. Hu Zi saw this scene with his own eyes. He saw the physical body that he had previously thought to be incredibly powerful, not having the slightest bit of resistance before Su Ming. This might be related to the fact that this clone belonged to Su Ming to begin with, but this sort of backlash was suppressed so easily. This was enough to tell that Su Ming's level of cultivation had already reached a state that could not be underestimated. Youngest junior brother, is he in Death Realm? Hu Zi was stunned, then instinctively asked in a silly manner. Death Realm? So what if he's in Death Realm? Let's not talk about him. Hu Zi, look at how fast little boy Su is growing with my help. Do you want to think about it? Give me a few hundred, no, tens of millions of crystals every year, and I promise you that your level of cultivation will increase by leaps and bounds. How about it? Think about it. This is a rare chance. Little Hu Zi, you have to seize it. The bald crane's eyes shone brightly. It had tried to entice Su Ming with so many things just for this moment. Chapter 1278. Su Ming did not pay attention to the bald crane tempting Hu Zi. At that moment, all his attention was focused on his eyes. He stared at the heavenly incense rune thousands of feet away and sank into deep thought. The heavenly incense rune could break a clone's soul and even give it its own will. This made Su Ming incredibly apprehensive. In fact, he had a vague feeling that the rune seemed to be specifically targeted against Abyss Builders. Even though all the Almighties in the world had clones, the Abyss Builders were the most unfathomable when it came to creating clones. In fact, it could be said that the Abyss Builders' clones took up most of the cultivation base of this race. Relying on their clones to increase their level of cultivation was a principle unique to Abyss Builders. This was something the other cultivators could not hope to compare to. In fact, they were incredibly envious of them. In silence, Su Ming turned his head around and cast a glance at the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. He was certain that he had wiped off the will that was born in this clone and fused it back into his soul. However, once he thought about the heavenly incense rune, a barely noticeable glint shone in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his right hand and pointed at the clone. Immediately, his divine sense shot out with a bang and fused into the clone's body. Once he searched through it carefully, he did not find any clues. No matter how he looked at it, the clone was the exact same as before he came to the heavenly incense rune. It completely belonged to Su Ming, and the feeling that it was a part of him was incredibly clear. This scene caused Su Ming to frown slightly. Could it be that I'm being too paranoid? Su Ming pondered over it for a moment, then sent a divine thought to the clone. Immediately, the clone's eyes sparkled, and he stood up slowly. Following Su Ming's will, he moved and was about to leave the heavenly incense runes area when Su Ming suddenly sent another divine thought. His divine thought controlled the clone to move back, but the instant he sent it out, the clone did not stop. Instead, he charged out of the heavenly incense runes area and turned into a long arc, intending to charge into the distance. A freezing glare shone in Su Ming's eyes. With a cold harumph, he was about to chase after the clone, but at that moment, the 9 heavenly incenses from the heavenly incense rune shuddered. With it, a large amount of ripples spread out, and the wisps of smoke that drifted out from the 2 burning heavenly incenses sank down swiftly. They surrounded the area and instantly blocked the path between Su Ming and the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. At the same time, a vast, mighty pressure spread out from the heavenly incense rune. When it appeared, Su Ming's soul immediately felt as if it had sunk into mud, and in his jerky state, he started feeling drowsy. Even though it only lasted for the span of a few breaths before Su Ming recovered, the delay allowed the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole to leave into the distance. A freezing glare appeared in Su Ming's eyes, but he did not continue chasing after it. Instead, he watched the clone leave into the distance. Hu Zi was stunned by this scene, and he looked as if he could not quite understand what had happened. As expected, there's a problem. Once the heavenly incense rune's soul is broken, it won't be easy for it to gather together again. Not only has the clone gained an independent will, he has also learned to be cunning. Judging by the way he handled this matter, it's very similar to mine. He might have already made preparations before I came and set up quite a number of backups. But if he had made preparations a long time ago, why would he stay here? He could have just left. Su Ming stared at the spot where the clone had disappeared, and a cold sneer appeared at the corners of his lips, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. But I wonder whether the consciousness born from the clone will be able to find the marks I left on him. I'd like to see just where the clone will go once he gains an independent will. A freezing glare shone in Su Ming's eyes. He turned around and no longer bothered about the clone, who had already disappeared without a trace. Instead, he cast his gaze on the heavenly incense rune. This rune has existed in this place for many years. I wonder whether Su Xianyi has come here before. Logically speaking, he should have come here before, but the possibility of his real self coming here is next to none. After all, his real self is sealed in the isolation grounds of Morning Dao sect. If that's the case, then the one who came here must have been his clone. If that's the case, I don't know how many clones Su Xianyi has, but the clone who came to investigate this place in the past clearly possessed an independent will. This rune might not be intentionally targeted at Abyss Builders, but its effect is the greatest against them. After all, even if the clones of other cultivators did not come here, they would still face the possibility of gaining their own will and suffering a backlash. They would need to refine their clones once in a while. But it's different for Abyss Builders. In fact, they have very few methods to refine their clones, because Abyss Builders do not need to refine their clones. Once they possess them, they can form a clone, and theoretically speaking, this clone will never suffer a backlash or have an independent will, because in truth, there is no difference between the real body and the clone. If there is truly a difference, then let's make a comparison. The soul of an Abyss Builder is like a person's body, and the clone is like a set of clothes. That's all. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. He walked slowly towards the heavenly incense rune. He was no longer in a hurry to leave. The strangeness of the heavenly incense rune had attracted his attention. When the 3 heavenly incense sticks burned, when Su Ming took a step forward, he lifted his right hand and seized the air in the direction of the 100,000 cultivators meditating not too far away. One of them shuddered and turned into a long arc that charged towards Su Ming. Su Ming pushed his palm against the top of his skull, and his divine sense surged into search through the person's memories. After the span of a few breaths, Su Ming let go. He did not injure the cultivator in the slightest bit and sent him back to his original spot. Su Ming had already obtained the answer he wanted. When the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole came here and was about to leave, the 3rd incense stick was extinguished. So that's how it is. But in truth, when the clone approached this place, he had already lost contact with me. The 9 heavenly incense sticks were originally burning, but now 7 of them have been extinguished. Could it be that the heavenly incense rune's extinguishment is not only related to time, but also because it can allow a clone to gain its own will? 7 incense sticks can allow 7 clones to gain their own will. But that's not right either. The heavenly incense rune has been here for countless years, and I don't know how many clones have gained their own will in this place. If all of them had extinguished along with the heavenly incense, then there would have been no more heavenly incense burning in this place a long time ago. This is either my guess is wrong, or I need to fulfill a certain requirement, such as only the Abyss Builders clones. Or perhaps there's also a requirement for my level of cultivation, or perhaps there are other requirements. As Su Ming took a step forward, he arrived at a spot that was nearly 1,000 feet away from the 9 heavenly incense sticks. At the instant he stepped into the place, a ripple of power erupted from his body, instantly causing Su Ming's thoughts to come to a halt. He no longer thought about anything else, because from the ripple of power that no one else could see, Su Ming sensed that he had reached a breakthrough in Fate Realm. His level of cultivation had entered Life Realm in a false manner. Waves of epiphanies belonging to Life Realm filled Su Ming's mind, but if he searched for them carefully, he would find nothing. In silence, Su Ming frowned. The closer he got to the heavenly incense rune, the more warning he felt. It was as if there was a secret between the heavenly incense rune and his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. This secret was related to why the clone had not left once he gained his own will. Instead, he had waited for Su Ming's arrival. However, Su Ming could not understand this connection. His expression was dark. He cast a glance at the heavenly incense rune, then decided to take a few steps forward. When he was nearly 500 feet away from the heavenly incense rune, his cultivation base let out a bang, and he reached a breakthrough from life realm to death realm. This level of cultivation gave Su Ming an incredibly realistic feeling, as if he had truly reached that realm. When the ripple of power from the ring on his right hand spread out, Su Ming instantly recovered from the illusion. A glint appeared in his eyes, and when he lifted his head to look at the 9 heavenly incenses, he lifted his right hand, and the ring on his index finger shone with a powerful white light. That light spread outward swiftly and turned into a layer of white ripple that spread through the 9 heavenly incenses in a forceful manner. At the instant the ripple swam through the 9 heavenly incenses, Su Ming's gaze focused on the 3rd incense. Su Ming saw a presence that was the exact same as his own in the 3rd heavenly incense. That presence was hidden in the 3rd heavenly incense, as if it was continuously analyzing him as Su Ming's cultivation base increased exponentially, and it was copying him to a certain degree. No wonder the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole still waited for me here, even though he already possessed his own consciousness. He must have predicted that I would definitely come, and he needed me to come, because he wanted to lure me here so that the heavenly incense that was extinguished because of him would copy my cultivation base and my future path of cultivation. Once it copied my cultivation base, it would definitely use a unique method for my clone to sense it. By doing so, it would be the same as giving him a path of cultivation that was the same as mine. It would also give the clone the possibility to surpass me. Su Ming's experiences over the years had tempered his mind to the point that it was as sharp as a monster's. At that moment, when he connected all the suspicious points together, he instantly came up with the truth and answer. Copy, clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. I created you. You are the body I formed after I possessed the crimson python phoenix. The body refinement art you practiced became stronger, and you went through many changes to repair the flaws in your life. When I devoured an ancient god, I perfected your physical body. From the beginning until the end, I created you step by step. You're just a clone, and yet you dare to be so ambitious towards me? You want to copy my future path? I'd like to see whether this heavenly incense rune has the right to copy me completely. If you can truly copy me completely, then I don't want this clone. I'll give you an independent serendipity. Pride appeared on Su Ming's face. After experiencing all the things in his life, when Su Ming said those words, there was a confidence in them. This was the confidence that a cultivator and a powerful warrior must possess. I recommend the novel Divine Dream Disaster. I'm limited in space, so I won't be writing an introduction. You can go read it and support it. Chapter 1279. 500 feet away from Su Ming was the 3rd heavenly incense in the heavenly incense rune. When it copied Su Ming's level of cultivation, a whirlwind roared and filled the area. Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole was breathing in the whirlwind with his physical body. A large number of wounds had appeared on his body at that moment, but they were rapidly healing. Gray light shone in the clone's eyes. There was a strange sort of intelligence in them. As he charged forward, countless pictures could be seen flashing in his pupils. Those pictures were of Su Ming's future path of cultivation, which had been copied by the 3rd heavenly incense. It was just as Su Ming had deduced. The clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole was indeed using a unique method to brand Su Ming's future path of cultivation into his heart. Through this brand, He turned it into the path he wanted to walk, so that his level of cultivation would not stop because he had cut off his connection with Su Ming. Since he could see Su Ming's future, he was confident that he could surpass him. As he moved forward, Su Ming remained outside the heavenly incense rune with an arrogant expression. Without a hint of hesitation, he continued moving forward. He swung his arm and decided to let go of his mind so that the third heavenly incense could copy him to its heart's content. When he was about 200 feet away from the heavenly incense rune, a rumble that only he could hear came from his body. His state of being seemed to have risen, and his level of cultivation instantly broke through Death Realm to reach a strange realm where he felt like he could turn into the galaxy. It was the realm of sublime paragons. There could only be one sublime paragon in a true world. It was impossible for a second one to appear. This was the rule of arid triad. At that moment, Su Ming sensed the power of a sublime paragon. It was a feeling that if he lifted his head, he could control the universe in his hands. This feeling came from the fake power of a sublime paragon. Sublime paragon. Arrogance appeared in Su Ming's eyes. With a step forward, he charged towards the heavenly incense rune. When he took 2 steps and was less than 50 feet away from the rune, his cultivation base was stirred up again in the fake state, causing it to rise to the peak of sublime paragons. However, Su Ming still did not stop. When he stepped in front of the heavenly incense rune and stood under the third heavenly incense, his cultivation base let out a bang and broke through sublime paragon realm to reach a realm Su Ming could not understand, but he knew that it was definitely not Avacania realm. This realm was so strong that with a single thought, he could destroy the hurricanes in the sky. With a single divine sense, he could extinguish all living beings. Su Ming stood under the third heavenly incense, and with an arrogant gaze, he asked languidly, "Is this the peak of my power that you can copy? If that's all, then your imitation isn't enough to make my clone become independent." Su Ming lifted his right hand and struck the third heavenly incense. With it, the heavenly incense shuddered with a bang. Then, a faint will that seemed to be filled with contempt spread out from the third heavenly incense and charged towards Su Ming to suppress him. This was what Hu Zi had mentioned earlier. He had sensed a similar will of life in the heavenly incense array. Clearly, the arrogance in Su Ming's words had angered the will slightly. At that moment, when it pressed down on Su Ming, a buzzing voice echoed in Su Ming's mind. "This realm is the strongest realm I have derived based on thine own state of being and thine own will. With thine arrogance, thou shalt know that realms are not empty words. If thou dare open thy mind and let me understand thy true thoughts, then I will know whether there is a path of cultivation in the world that I cannot copy. It's impossible for me to open my mind, but it won't be difficult for me to let you know my thoughts when I cultivate. But if you cannot copy it, then what?" Su Ming said flatly with a swing of his arm. "If you cannot do it, then I will naturally make thine clone lose his consciousness once more, so that he will belong to thine once more." There was a confident tone in the voice of the rune's will as it echoed in the air. "Is it the only way? If you can copy it, then I will give up on my clone and let him become independent under your will. But if you cannot copy it, then I will make one of your 9 heavenly incenses be destroyed for eternity. With this punishment, I will let you know that if you touch my things, then you will have to pay the price." Su Ming's voice was calm, but the grim, killing intent in it made the will of the rune fall silent for a moment before it let out a cold harumph. Su Ming leaped up and charged towards the top of the third heavenly incense. In an instant, he closed in on it and sat down cross-legged at the end of the extinguished incense stick. A glint shone in his eyes, and once he closed them, ripples spread out from the ring on his right hand. They did not spread outwards, but fused into his body and surrounded his soul. Then, when he spread his will outwards, the will of the rune on the third heavenly incense surged into Su Ming's body and attacked his soul. However, Su Ming's soul was protected by the ring, and he was completely unbothered by the actions of the heavenly incense's will. He did not spread out, but only revealed a corner of it to spread out Su Ming's determination towards his future path of cultivation. At the instant booming sounds reverberated in Su Ming's body, the will of the rune sensed Su Ming's thoughts and the wisp of soul he had revealed. Immediately, Su Ming's level of cultivation rose again while he was still in the false state of cultivation. This time, he still did not reach Avicania realm, but as it rose, Su Ming's level of cultivation became stronger. In the end, as the booming sounds in his body rose, the will of the rune let out a low roar filled with disbelief. This is... Thou dost possess arid triads, great disaster? This is impossible. Why is it impossible? With my power of abyss builder's possession, continue making deductions and see whether it is possible. Su Ming opened his eyes, and a ghastly look appeared in them. When he spoke, the will of the rune used a unique method to make deductions again. In just the span of a few breaths, Su Ming's cultivation base rose explosively once more. At the same time, he sensed that arid triads' 4 great true worlds seemed to exist in his mind. The 4 great true worlds seemed to have become a part of Su Ming's body. Besides the 4 great true worlds, Su Ming also sensed that there were 3 great ancient kingdoms in the galaxy. They were arid triads' ancient kingdoms. Almost at the instant the 4 great true worlds and the 3 great ancient kingdoms appeared in Su Ming's mind, his level of cultivation reached a breakthrough with a bang and reached an unbelievable realm. Before Su Ming could even experience this realm, 2 pictures instantly appeared in his mind. These 2 pictures were not created by Su Ming. Instead, the will of the rune had been shocked by the power of future cultivation in Su Ming's mind, and as it used a unique method to verify and make deductions, it had lost control due to shock. What was originally only visible to the will of the rune, and at that moment, Su Ming saw it. The first scene was a blood-colored starry sky. The reason why the starry sky was red was because there were countless broken bodies within it. There was no end to the corpses, and they formed a picture that would shock anyone who saw it. They could sense that the galaxy belonged to arid triad expanse cosmos. Among the countless corpses was a man. He had a head of white hair and was dressed in a black robe. He threw his head back and let out an incredibly sorrowful roar. That man was Su Ming. There was an ancient air on his face. His hair was snow white, and there were countless wounds on his body. He had already lost his left hand, and there were only bones left in his legs. There was a crimson arrow stuck in his chest after it had pierced through him. Around him, Huzi's eyes were open, but he was no longer breathing. Second senior brother's body had shattered, and only his head was left. There was a hole at the center of his brows, and his body and soul had been destroyed. Eldest senior brother was also there. His body stood tall among the corpses, not too far away. He had already died in battle. Most of the corpses around the shattered white ring were unfamiliar faces, but there were some that Su Ming was familiar with. Yu Xian was among them. Her eyes were closed, as if she was a sleeping sun, but the spot where her heart was located was filled with dried blood. No one knew how long she had been dead. On the other side was Su Xianyi. He knelt on one knee with his head lowered while he held a woman's corpse in his arms. He did not move and had already breathed his last. Further away was the elder. His legs had already shattered. Even before he died, his lifeless eyes were still staring at the galaxy, and a hint of madness appeared in them. Further away, Su Ming saw a young figure. It was Lei Chun, whom he had never been able to find in the past. His body had been cut into pieces, his head had been pierced by a long spear and pinned to a piece of flesh. He was looking at Su Ming, and there was regret and anguish in his eyes, along with a hint of release. Everyone, Chang He, Flame Fiend's progenitor, everything, and all the people Su Ming was familiar with had died in battle. Su Hui was by Su Ming's side as well. There was still a smile on her lifeless face. Su Ming, you have to be strong. You have to live. You have to live. A weak voice with endless grief came from the galaxy, from a huge gap in the galaxy. As the voice spoke, a black feather floated down and landed in front of Su Ming. That voice belonged to the bald crane. The picture ended, and Su Ming shuddered. Then, the second picture appeared. In it, he was dressed in a blood-red robe, and with a callous and merciless gaze, he had a boundless sea of blood behind him. It could be seen that there were 180 expanse cosmoses in that sea of blood, and it was Dark Dawn. All of Dark Dawn was dyed in blood. Demon. He's arid triads, demon paragon. Shrill screams of pain, filled with terror, came from the area in front of Su Ming. Saint D Fire Expanse Cosmos was also formed by 180 expanse cosmoses. The picture ended, and Su Ming opened his eyes. They were crimson red, and he stared at the heavenly incense rune. His voice was like an ancient, freezing wind, and there was a hint of trembling in it. What did I see? Silence. The heavenly incense rune fell completely silent at that instant. What did I see? Su Ming roared. When he lifted his right hand, the white ring flew out with a bang from his finger. It grew to become several thousands of feet big in midair and enveloped the area, causing the galaxy to look as if it was about to shatter. Endless mighty pressure descended, and a destructive will descended from Su Ming's body without holding anything back. I will ask you one last time. What did I see? My rune is not a relocation, nor is it a summon. It is a prayer to predict the future and open up the path of time. What you saw is the secrets of the universe that cannot be changed. Ask for recommendation votes. Chapter 1280. The Secrets of the Universe. Su Ming was silent, then suddenly threw his head back and laughed. There was mockery in his laughter. He did not believe in the so-called secrets of a universe. Even if the picture was incredibly real, even if Su Ming himself had sunk into it for an instant, sensed his ancient self, and saw the forlorn and great grief after everything around him was destroyed, he still did not believe that all of this was the secrets of the universe in the future. You're just a mere spirit of a rune and a mere heavenly incense rune, and you dare to say the words secrets of the universe? This is clearly a transformation of your art. You want to throw my mind into disorder and turn it into a trick that will exist if I believe in it. You want to plant a seed in my soul. This is absolutely absurd. Since you claim to be able to pray, I wonder if you can predict how many of your 9 incense sticks will be broken today? Killing intent appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he spoke slowly with a cold sneer on his lips. The spirit of the rune was silent for a moment before it said in anguish, "Today is a disaster. This disaster is not you, but I have revealed the secrets of the universe, and the disaster has descended on me through your hands. Today, 3 of the 9 heavenly incense sticks will be broken." 3 will be broken? When Su Ming spoke, he did not give the heavenly incense rune any chance to continue speaking. When he lifted his right hand, he swiftly brought it down and pushed it against the 3rd heavenly incense. At the same time, the floating ring above Su Ming also sank down and charged towards the heavenly incense. It was so quick that it landed on the heavenly incense almost at the same time as Su Ming's right hand. Booming sounds echoed in space. In an instant, Su Ming's power might not be able to destroy the 3rd heavenly incense, but his ring was a supreme treasure in Avacania realm. When it descended, it landed on the 3rd heavenly incense and sank down. Wherever it went, the heavenly incense roared. Cracks appeared on it, and cracking sounds echoed in space. When the ring landed at the bottom, the 3rd heavenly incense that had stood erect in true morning Tao world for countless years shattered with a bang, turning into ashes that scattered into the air before disappearing into the air. The rune did not fight back. It did not fight back. Instead, it quietly endured the destruction of the 3rd heavenly incense. You're not fighting back? Killing intent shone in Su Ming's eyes. He cast a glance at the heavenly incense rune, and the killing intent in his eyes instantly disappeared, turning into aloofness. He did not continue attacking. He could tell that the heavenly incense rune had said that 3 of its incense sticks would be destroyed today. If Su Ming continued attacking and destroyed the 2nd and 3rd incense sticks, then the heavenly incense rune would definitely counterattack at full power to prevent the fourth from being destroyed. Once that happened, Su Ming would be forced into an incredibly passive position. That was why when a freezing glare shone in his eyes, he swung his arm, and the ring immediately returned to him. When he put it on his right index finger, Su Ming moved forward and swiftly walked out of the heavenly incense rune to appear beside the bald crane and Hu Zi. He lifted his right hand and swung it in the air. Immediately, an hourglass appeared beside him. He looked at the heavenly incense rune with a cold gaze and spoke flatly. You said that 3 incense sticks would be broken today, but you've only broken 1. There's still plenty of time. I'd like to see how you will use me to break the 3 heavenly incense sticks you spoke of. As Su Ming laughed coldly, he sat down cross-legged. This is the secret of the heavens. This is fate. I do not know how thou hast managed to break the remaining 2 heavenly incense sticks, but this is the secret of the heavens, and it must be so. With a hint of age in its voice, the rune spirit's voice came from the heavenly incense rune. Time trickled by. Su Ming sat cross-legged and stared at the heavenly incense rune coldly. He had made up his mind that he would not attack again. He wanted to see how the heavenly incense rune would break 3 of its incense sticks, just as the rune spirit had said. If this was the heavenly incense rune spirit's plan, then when the day was over and the hourglass was over, when a new day arrived, Su Ming would not mind going to the other incense sticks in the heavenly incense rune. But today he would not attack. He might have said that he did not believe in the picture revealed by the secret of the heavens, but anyone else would definitely not believe in it completely. If there was even the slightest hint of possibility, then Su Ming's heart would clench in pain. His eldest senior brother, second senior brother, Hu Zi, and all the people Su Ming knew had died horribly in the picture. The ancient rune spirit had thrown his head back and roared shrilly at the sky. Those scenes continued echoing in Su Ming's mind, causing his heart to tremble and him to be afraid. He was afraid that that scene would become real. He was afraid that all the lives around him would die. He was afraid of this so-called secret of the heavens. Time trickled by, and gradually, there was not much time left in the hourglass Su Ming had placed there. Most of the day had already passed, and in less than 4 hours, it would end. However, Su Ming did not notice any change in the heavenly incense rune. It was as if the spirit of the heavenly incense rune was incredibly certain that once the secret of the heavens was revealed, it would definitely appear. At that moment, what Su Ming did not know was that the Emperor of Abyss True World was undergoing a refinement that had begun several months ago. This refinement was happening in the huge palace floating in the galaxy of the Emperor of Abyss True World. Yu Xian silently sat cross-legged on a platform surrounded by countless formations in the palace. There were a total of 2 platforms here. In front of Yu Xian, on the other platform, sat a middle-aged man. The man's entire body was surrounded by chains formed by countless runic symbols. They pierced through his body and bound him to the platform, making him unable to move even a single inch. Pained roars tumbled out of his mouth towards the sky. His shrill voice was filled with endless resentment and madness. As he roared, milky white light was forcefully extracted from his body. The chains formed by the runic symbols were like tunnels that continuously extracted his life force and cultivation base to fuse into Yu Xian's body, who was on the other platform. Yu Xian's expression was apathetic. She lowered her head and sensed that as the unfamiliar middle-aged man's cultivation base and life force fused into her, her body was going through a strange transformation. Su Xian, he had his hands placed behind his back as he floated in midair. He watched everything happening beneath him with an aloof gaze. Behind him stood the Emperor of Abyss, True World's Emperor of Abyss, and sang quietly. Not bad. It's going rather smoothly. It's a joke that Tion wants to possess me and become an Abyss builder. He doesn't know about this. In truth, I have the same plan, but it's clear that I'm about to succeed. Emperor of Abyss, you've done well over the years. Su Xian, he said flatly after sweeping his gaze past the middle-aged man on the second platform. I've done everything according to your orders, Master. It's best if you're satisfied. This clone of a senior Abyss builder who possesses his own has been hiding in the Emperor of Abyss True World. To capture him alive in the past, I worked together with the powerful warriors from the Emperor of Abyss True World and the rune you gave me. I paid quite a large price, but fortunately, everything went smoothly. I hope that the activation of your blood will also go smoothly. I wonder which senior Abyss builder this clone belonged to. The Emperor of Abyss behind, Su Xian, asked with a smile. My younger brother, Su Dao who has the royal blood coursing through his veins. His clone went to True Morning Dao World's heavenly incense rune a long time ago before the fifth True World was destroyed. He inherited the sixth heavenly incense, and once he fused with it, he gained his own independent will. It's a pity that before my younger brother could leave the fifth True World and search for his clone to fuse with, disaster descended. Su Xian looked at the middle-aged man roaring shrilly on the second platform, and a hint of mercilessness appeared on his face. To make the Abyss Builders rise to power, I can sacrifice everything. Heavenly Incense Rune. The relationship between this rune and the Abyss Builders is... The person who asked this question was not the Emperor of Abyss, but Sang. The Heavenly Incense Rune appeared before the Abyss Builders. Rumors say that it is an item from the same era as Old Man Extermination, but I don't believe it. We Abyss Builders don't pay much attention to the other functions of the rune, but if we use it well, we can allow our clones to become independent, and when we reach a bottleneck, we can break through it. Each time an incense is extinguished, an Abyss Builder's clone will go there and fulfill certain requirements that I don't know of. Once the incense is extinguished, the clone will be separated from the main body, and it will gain its own independent will. He can practice cultivation and become independent, but this also means that he can be possessed a second time. A strange and enchanting light appeared in Su Xianyi's eyes. Su Xian turned around, looked at Sang, and said languidly, "Once the same body is possessed a second time, an even greater power will erupt from it. If the possession is successful, then it can break through its bottleneck. This is the greatest benefit of the Heavenly Incense Rune to the Abyss Builders. 6 of the Heavenly Incense Rune have been extinguished. Besides the clone in front of us, there are 5 other Abyss Builders clones. It's a pity that they hid themselves very well. Besides one of them, even I would have a hard time finding the others," Su Xian said faintly. "Besides one of them, this one might be Master's clone," Sang said calmly. A brilliant light shone in Su Xianyi's eyes. He smiled faintly and did not deny it. At that moment, on the second platform, the middle-aged man whose body had been pierced by the chains formed by the runic symbols, the clone of Su Xianyi's younger brother, threw his head back and let out a roar that shook the sky and earth. His body instantly withered, and in the blink of an eye, he was reduced to a skeleton. He was also reduced to ashes. A large amount of white light charged towards Yuxian through the chains and surged into her body. At the same time it changed her constitution, it was also swiftly absorbed by the seed of life extermination in Yuxian's soul. It seemed complete, but needed some time to nourish it before it could truly grow. Half of the seed of life extermination belonged to Su Ming, and the other half was a fragment. They were connected together, and at that moment, they were rapidly absorbing the clone's cultivation base and life force. Among them, the one who had the greatest effect, and could even be said to have indirectly wiped out the clone's consciousness and reduced him to ashes, was not Su Xian, nor was it Yuxian, but the half of the seed of life extermination that once belonged to Su Ming in Yuxian's body. It was the one who had perfectly completed all of this and perfectly killed the Abyss Builder's clone. There was still a hint of Su Ming's presence left on the seed of life extermination. After all, its growth had absorbed Su Ming's blood and soul over the course of 1,000-something years. This was why, even if it had been separated from Su Ming, it still contained his presence. Chapter 1281. At the instant the clone Su Xian Yi saw in the Emperor of Abyss true world turned into ashes, the hourglass outside, the heavenly incense rune, in true morning Tao world showed that there were 2 hours left until the end of the day. At that moment, the sixth of the 8 heavenly incense shuddered. At the instant Su Ming's pupil shrank, he saw the 6th heavenly incense shatter with a bang. As it shattered layer by layer, it turned into a layer of ashes that scattered into the air and disappeared into the air. At the same time the ashes scattered away, wisps of a presence that caused Su Ming's expression to change and eventually turn dark spread out from within. He could tell that this presence belonged to him. The second, an ancient voice came from the spirit of the rune, which had 2 heavenly incense sticks broken. As it echoed in the air, Su Ming's expression turned even darker. So I wasn't the one who personally attacked. All the people and things that are connected to me and have my presence will be included in this day. Su Ming swiftly closed his eyes. In an instant, he found his Akang clone in his mind. He already knew about this, and also noticed that the presence that had destroyed the heavenly incense just now belonged to him. But most of it belonged to the seed of life extermination, which had been separated from his body. He did not know what had happened to the seed of life extermination and why it could destroy the heavenly incense. But it was clear that it was related to an independent clone guided by the heavenly incense that had collapsed. However, Su Ming did not have the time to think about this at that moment. At the instant his divine sense connected with his Akang clone, his pupil shrank. He sensed that his Akang clone was surrounding a broken planet with tens of thousands of cultivators, and with killing intent, his Akang clone had already lifted his right hand, intending to destroy the planet. It did not matter whether there was anyone in the planet who could affect the heavenly incense rune. Once Su Ming fused with his Akang clone's power, he immediately made his decision. The Akang clone slowly lowered his lifted right hand. The grim, murderous look on his face and the blood-red light in his eyes gradually faded away. He did not attack again, but instead sat down cross-legged and waited for the final 2 hours of the day to end. As for Su Ming, he carefully recalled all the people and things that were related to his presence. In the end, he was completely certain that nothing unexpected would happen. He stared at the heavenly incense rune with a dark expression. At that moment, there was only the time it takes for an incense stick to burn away. I really want to know how the 3rd heavenly incense will break. There was an aloof look in Su Ming's eyes. Huzi and the bald crane were silent by his side. They could also tell what was going on and knew that Su Ming had sunk into a state of stubbornness, and they did not dare disturb him. Time passed slowly, breath by breath. When the time for an incense stick to burn was about to pass, and there were less than 10 grains of sand left in the upper layer of the hourglass, the heavenly incense array spirit still did not show any signs of movement. It was still extremely certain that what it had predicted would happen. At the instant the final grain of sand fell and the time for the day was completely over, the last of the 7 heavenly incense runes reflected in Su Ming's eyes, which was clearly the first heavenly incense rune to be extinguished since ancient times, shuddered with a bang. Countless cracks appeared on it, and at the instant the time for the day to end, it crumbled and turned into ashes. The heavenly incense rune spirit did not do a single thing as it crumbled, neither did it participate in the process. In fact, even before it crumbled, it remained calm. This was definitely not its own doing. Su Ming could sense it clearly. His face gradually turned pale, and his body started trembling faintly, because he noticed that when the last heavenly incense rune crumbled, a hint of presence spread out from it, and that presence belonged to Su Ming. But what caused Su Ming to tremble and his face to turn pale was that even though that presence belonged to him, he was completely unfamiliar with it. This was a very contradictory statement, but at that moment, that was what Su Ming felt in his heart. This is the secret of heaven. The disaster has descended upon me through thy hand. The destruction of the 3 incense sticks is the punishment for me, revealing the secret of heaven. What the secret of heaven reveals will definitely come true. It will definitely exist and definitely happen. the heavenly incense rune spirit mumbled. There was an ancient tone in its voice as it echoed in the air. The secret of heaven. Su Ming stood up slowly, and a ferocious look appeared in his eyes. With a single move, he charged towards the heavenly incense rune. When he lifted his right hand, the ring of the supreme treasure flew out with a bang. At the same time, an astonishing power erupted from Su Ming's body. It was the power of Fate Realm, and it was not an ordinary power in Fate Realm. It was a vast power that could allow him to fight against those in Life Realm in Air Triad. In fact, even if he faced those in Death Realm, Su Ming would still have the right to attack. The secret of heaven says to break 3 incense sticks, but I will definitely break all of them. As Su Ming spoke, he closed in. As his cultivation base erupted from his body, the ring of the supreme treasure shone with a piercing light. A presence that shook the sky and earth erupted from the supreme treasure. It was a power that could destroy space in the area, and with a bang, it charged towards the heavenly incense rune. Why dost thou? Yesterday is over. The spirit of the heavenly incense rune sighed softly. It did not fight back, and simply allowed the vast power from the ring to descend on it with a bang. In the midst of that astonishing bang, the remaining 6 heavenly incense shuddered. The 4th heavenly incense crumbled and turned into ashes that scattered away. Killing intent shone in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his right hand, formed a seal, and swung his arm. Immediately, the ring of the supreme treasure charged towards the heavenly incense rune with a loud whistle. Booming sound spread out, and the heavenly incense rune crumbled. The 5th heavenly incense shattered, leaving only 4 incense sticks. 2 of them were burning, and the other 2 were still burning. The power to reverse time appeared, as if it wanted to restore them. Su Ming struck the center of his brows with his left hand. Immediately, the past and future appeared in his body, and the power to reverse time erupted from his body. With a low growl, he controlled the ring of the supreme treasure with his right hand and swung it. It drew an arc in the air and rushed towards the heavenly incense rune again. This time, the ring contained Su Ming's inborn ability to interfere with the reversal of time. With a loud bang, it crashed into the heavenly incense rune. Booming sounds surged into the heavens, and besides the 2 heavenly incense sticks that were still burning, the remaining 2 were reduced to dust. However, Su Ming stood there with a complicated expression on his face. He saw that the 4 heavenly incense sticks he had destroyed ignored Su Ming's power to interfere with the reversal of time. They were still slowly but surely recovering and gathering together. It was as if their regathering was not due to Su Ming using the reversal of time as he had seen it, but was due to a power that surpassed what Su Ming could understand at that moment. With it, they were recovering after they were destroyed. It's useless. I have already paid the price for revealing the secrets of the universe. I do not know when you will pay the price, but when the secrets of the universe appear, they will definitely appear. This sentence will never change. Even if you destroy the remaining heavenly incense sticks, so what? Today is today, and yesterday is over. The heavenly incense rune sighed softly, and it will slowly fade away. Gradually, the 4 heavenly incense sticks Su Ming had destroyed gathered together. But when the will of the rune spirit disappeared, the heavenly incense sticks looked as if they had turned into inanimate objects. I have revealed the secrets of the universe. Breaking 3 heavenly incense sticks is just an external punishment. The internal punishment is my will's slumber. It has been 3,720 years. When I wake up, it will be the time you will see the secrets of the universe. At that time, we will meet again. As the heavenly incense rune's spirit's voice grew weaker, the 2 heavenly incense sticks that were still burning slowly extinguished. It was not due to the Abyss Builder's clone being extinguished, but due to the rune spirits falling into deep sleep. After 3,720 years, the 2 heavenly incense sticks would be lit up once more. Su Ming stared at the extinguished heavenly incense sticks, then at the 6 heavenly incense sticks before him. He sensed the strange power from the heavenly incense rune around him gradually fading away, and when it completely disappeared, he fell silent. Anguish appeared on his face. In truth, when he attacked, Su Ming had already understood that he had lost the game against the heavenly incense rune. Even if he had destroyed the other heavenly incense sticks, he had still lost more than a day. The secrets of the universe had said that he had broken 3 incense sticks in one day. If I had broken 3 or more before this. Su Ming stood quietly in the galaxy and stared at the extinguished heavenly incense rune. He could not help but have this question rise in his head. Su Ming remained silent. After a long while, he sighed softly. In the end, the mysteries of the secrets of the universe could be summed up in one word: if. In truth, this word contained the secrets of a universe. If he understood it, then he understood it. If he did not, then he could not force it. The scenes of the secrets of the universe flashed in Su Ming's eyes, and they were buried in the depths of his heart. I don't believe in the heavens. I don't believe in fate. I only believe in myself. So what if it's the secrets of the universe? I can change the secrets of the universe and replace it with the heavens to change my fate. The secrets of the universe are just a point in the future. With this point as the surface, I can turn it around. Resolve and determination appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He knew that he could not think too much about this. The more he thought about it, the more he would instinctively believe in it. And the more he believed in it, the more he would make the secrets of the universe come true. If that was the case, a brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes, and he looked towards the galaxy and space. I'll start with a clone that practices the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. The heavenly incense has already been extinguished. I like to see just where you can hide. As Su Ming took a step forward, he arrived beside Hu Zi and the bald crane in an instant. Hu Zi looked as if he wanted to say something, but hesitated. He cast a glance at Su Ming, but in the end, he did not speak. Hu Zi, I won't be returning to the 9th summit, which is still being built for the time being. I'm going to search for my clone that betrayed me. Are you coming with me, or are you going back? Su Ming looked at Hu Zi. Naturally, I'll go with you wherever you go. I'm your senior brother. An eldest senior brother told me to help you. You can't just cast me aside and go on your own, Hu Zi said loudly while striking his chest. Su Ming looked at Hu Zi, and the scenes of the secrets of the universe rose uncontrollably in his head. Hu Zi was covered in blood, and his eyes were wide open as he glared at the heavens, but there was not a hint of life within him. Su Ming's heart clenched in pain, but his expression became even more resolute. Monthly votes, recommendation votes. Chapter 1282. Long arcs charged through the whirlwind in the galaxy. Su Ming was in front, and Hu Zi was by his side. As for the bald crane, it lay on Hu Zi's shoulder and continued trying to bewitch him in a low voice. Gradually, Hu Zi grew annoyed, and he grabbed the bald crane's neck to send it into the distance. But in the span of a few breaths, the bald crane appeared again and lay on Hu Zi's shoulder to continue trying to bewitch him. Su Ming's expression was calm. The third eye at the center of his brow was open, and it shone with a strange and enchanting light. He stared at the whirlwind in the galaxy, and with it, he could see a silver thread stretching into the depths of the whirlwind. That silver thread was the mark left behind by Su Ming's divine sense when he struck the top of the clone's skull. Through it, he could find the clone's location. Days passed, and in the blink of an eye, half a month went by. During that time, Su Ming charged through the galaxy in search of the silver thread and drew closer to his clone. His clone, who had gained his own consciousness, had clearly noticed Su Ming's arrival and was also charging into the distance, continuously changing directions in an attempt to shake him off. But no matter how he tried to flee, he could not escape from Su Ming's grasp. On the 19th day of the chase, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He took a step into the air and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already far away, standing beyond a broken planet. Almost at the instant he appeared, he saw the silver threads stretching into the broken planet with his third eye. As he magnified them, Su Ming saw the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole, sitting cross-legged and meditating on a mountain in the planet. At the instant Su Ming looked towards the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. The black-robed clone lifted his head and stared at the sky coldly. His gaze met Su Ming's. A cold sneer appeared at the corners of Su Ming's lips. At that moment, Hu Zi and the bald crane arrived, and their gazes landed on the broken planet. Hu Zi, guard this place. My clone is rather cunning. He must have made preparations when he chose this place. If he wants to escape later, you have to stop him. Baldy, guard this place. Su Ming lifted his finger and pointed in the direction right before him. Hu Zi grinned and disappeared with a single move. When he reappeared, he was already at the spot Su Ming had requested. The bald crane quickly patted its chest, looking as if it wanted Su Ming to be completely at ease. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He stared at the broken planet, and the cold sneer on his lips grew wider. The clone's personality was very similar to his own. Since he chose this place, he must have set up an ambush. But no matter what sort of preparations the clone had made, Su Ming did not intend to step into the broken planet. Instead, he lifted his right hand, and the ring on his right hand shone. A ripple spread out and surrounded his palm. Su Ming formed a seal and flung his arm. A large number of ripples turned into circles that charged towards the broken planet. When the ripples touched the planet, it shuddered. A large number of cracks spread out with cracking sounds. In just a span of 2 breaths, booming sounds reverberated in space, and the planet crumbled. As it crumbled, Su Ming took a step forward like a bolt of lightning and stepped into the crumbling planet. He lifted his right hand, formed a seal, and pointed forward. With it, he sliced through space and changed the laws in the land. He released the power of Fate Realm and charged towards the center of the clone's brow while the planet crumbled. Then, he pointed at the center of the clone's brow. He was so quick that he instantly closed in on the clone, but the clone seemed to have known that Su Ming would do this. Not a hint of panic could be detected on his face. Almost at the instant Su Ming closed in, he lifted his right hand, clenched his fist, and let out a low growl. His body instantly squirmed, and he threw a punch at Su Ming. At the instant the punch collided with Su Ming's finger, a deafening boom shook the sky and earth. A huge force swept towards Su Ming from the clone, causing him to freeze for a moment. But it was only for a moment. No matter how strong the clone was, he was still a clone, and it had only been a short time since his independent will had appeared. Su Ming let out a cold harumph. He flung his cultivation base forward through the finger formed by the seal formed by his right hand. Immediately, booming sounds shot into the air, and the clone coughed up a huge mouthful of blood. He staggered backwards and was forced back thousands of feet. Yet at that moment, Su Ming's pupils shrank. The clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole being forced back was within Su Ming's expectations, but being forced back thousands of feet was a problem. Almost at the instant Su Ming noticed it, a ferocious smile appeared on the clone's lips. There was even a hint of derision in it. He lifted his hands and pushed his palms together in front of him, and a voice Su Ming was familiar with tumbled out of his mouth. Write the script underground. This will be the grave. Once he said those words, the clone lifted his hands and formed a seal before pointing forward. Immediately, the shattered planet came to a swift halt as it tumbled backwards. In the blink of an eye, it no longer crumbled. Instead, it shrank, making it seem as if time had been reversed. But in truth, it was due to the clone's divine ability. In an instant, the shattered planet gathered together once more, but it was no longer the exact same planet as before. Instead, it was a lone grave formed by countless shattered stones. The grave was like a seal. There were countless bolts of lightning swimming on its surface, and they let out crackling sounds as they completely sealed Su Ming within. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The clone's personality was practically the same as Su Ming's. They were both incredibly cunning. He had predicted that Su Ming would definitely chase after him, and once he caught up to him and saw that he was on a planet, he would guess that there was something off about it. The possibility of him coming personally was not high, and there was a higher possibility that he would destroy the planet and the world outside. Yet no matter what, as long as Su Ming got close, the clone that practiced the art of cultivating Hollow Shadows Whole would execute the underground script of cultivating Hollow Shadows Whole. He was betting that Su Ming still did not understand him, betting that Su Ming always believed that he was only skilled in physical arts. The instant the seal was formed, the clone threw his head back and roared. His entire body was immediately drenched in blood. In the blink of an eye, he was practically covered in blood, but when he did so, wisps of silver light were forced out of the center of his brows. All of this lasted for about the span of 3 breaths. When Hu Zi's expression changed in the distance, he closed in with a furious roar. At the instant the clone closed in on him with a furious roar, the clone threw his head back and laughed loudly. He finally forced out all the silver wisps at the center of his brows. He moved, and with a ferocious smile, he lifted his right hand and hurled a punch at Hu Zi. Booming sounds echoed in the air. Hu Zi shuddered and was forced back several thousands of feet. He coughed up a mouthful of blood. When he lifted his head, he found that the clone did not chase after him. Instead, he turned into a long arc and left into the distance. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the whirlwind. Only the clone's laughter echoed in space, along with his wild and untamed voice. My real self, without the silver wisps hidden in my body for you to track. I'd like to see how you'll catch up to me. Don't worry, I can tell you where I'm going. Even if you destroy the 3rd heavenly incense and cut off my path of copying it, it'll be fine. I'll go to the other true worlds and search for Su Xianyi. I believe that he will be very interested in me. When I have enough power, I will devour you and replace you. The clone's laughter gradually faded away, and he could no longer be seen. With a bang, the gigantic tomb of shattered stones sealing Su Ming crumbled. Su Ming walked out with a dark expression on his face. He cast a glance at the galaxy in the distance, and a hint of derision shone in his eyes. He had indeed not expected that the clone that practiced the art of swallowing Hollow Shadows Whole would be in control of his divine abilities instead of just relying on his physical power. However, what the clone did not know was that Su Ming would never only make one preparation when he did things. Besides the silver wisps, the clone also had another trump card. That was the golden color of his personality that had fused with the hollow, swallowing clone. Even though the hollow, swallowing clone had severed his soul because he had gained sentience, the golden personality still existed in the hollow, swallowing clone's body. It was just that it was so dim that the hollow, swallowing clone could not detect it. However, due to the existence of the golden personality and the fact that it had been born from his body, the clone that practiced the art of swallowing Hollow Shadows Whole was like a torch in a world of darkness in Su Ming's eyes. He was incredibly clear. Hu Zi, go back and search for eldest senior brother and the others. We'll build the 9th summit together. This clone of mine is very cunning. I'll need some time to capture him. Once I subdue him, I'll go look for all of you. Su Ming turned his head around and cast a glance at Hu Zi. He lifted his right hand and swung it. A gentle power immediately surged out and seeped into Hu Zi's body, healing most of his injuries. Hu Zi looked at Su Ming, and after a moment of hesitation, he still chose to agree to it. After all, the clone that practiced the art of swallowing Hollow Shadows Whole was incredibly strong. Hu Zi's level of cultivation might be extraordinary, but the difference between him and the clone was too great. If he followed Su Ming, not only would he not be of any use, he would instead become a burden to him. Hu Zi, you're the best at the relocation rune to Morning Dao Sect. When the time comes, help me break it. I want to go to Morning Dao Sect and see whether there are any survivors there. Besides, Morning Dao Sect Mountain Base can also be used as the 9th Summit's base. And the predecessor of Dao Ocean is also there. Su Ming wrapped his fist in his palm towards Hu Zi and sent out a ripple that could repel whirlwinds. Once it appeared under Hu Zi's feet, he turned around and turned into a long arc. The bald crane quickly followed after him and disappeared in an instant. Hu Zi watched Su Ming leave into the distance, then stood in the galaxy. A hint of determination appeared on his honest face. Cultivation. I must have an even stronger level of cultivation. I can't let them fall too far behind me. I must become stronger. With resolve in his eyes, Hu Zi turned around and turned into a long arc that left into the distance. Su Ming was so fast that he shifted. With the supreme treasure, when the ripples spread out, the whirlwind could not affect him in the slightest, causing him to become even faster. In just a dozen-something breaths, he sensed the clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole in his heart. No matter how strong the clone's physical body is, he won't be able to walk too far in the whirlwinds. He might have already reached his limit just now. A freezing glare shone in Su Ming's eyes, and he took a step forward. Recommendation votes that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.